Good morning. Welcome to Lake Natoma here just outside of Sacramento in sunny Rancho Cordova. We are very excited. What a beautiful morning it is here at Lake Natoma. A great opportunity for racing for all these collegiate crews. So just outstanding conditions on the course here. We're taking a look right now up at the start line, getting ready to start our first heats of the morning, the IRA National Championships. The heats running first off for the men's lightweight fours. So just taking a minute to thank the Sacramento State Aquatic Center, the California State Parks, the local organizing committee, and especially all the volunteers that are making this whole race day operation run so smoothly for all these athletes. So thank you for coming out to Lake Natoma here in sunny Rancho Cordova, California. We have a full slate of races for you this morning. We're going to be starting with the men's lightweight fours, the men's varsity eights coming up next, men's lightweight eights following, the men's second varsity heavyweight eights, and then we got the men's third varsity eights, the men's varsity fours, and the lightweight four width to finish out the morning. The afternoon will be a full slate of repechage races. Right now we are about 1 minute away from the start of your national championships. So I'm Steve Todd here at the finish line. Colleen Seville with me. Fred Schock out on the water. We are hoping to provide you guys with a great coverage of the IRAs this morning. And Colleen, we're off.
Yeah, we're off. We have a race underway, Steve. Thank you for that. Yes, this is the start of the men's lightweight straight four. So these shells do not have a coxswain. We have Dartmouth out of lane 1, Princeton lane 2, Yale lane 3, Harvard lane 4, and Cornell lane 5. Just an absolutely beautiful shot here through the first stretch. And looking at the screen, we can see Cornell out of lane 5, closest to us.
Okay, here we go. The lake is lit up with racing.
And
right
as these
now,
crews move
it
through the
looks
first
like
250
Dartmouth had a very
meters,
good
still
start
pretty tightly
on
packed.
the
Of
inside,
course,
along with
last year
Princeton
in the men's
and
lightweight straight
Yale.
four.
Falling back slightly are Harvard and Cornell as we approach the first 500 meters. Dartmouth continues to push its bow out about a deck up over Yale and Princeton, who are virtually tied for that second spot. Harvard just 2 seats back, Cornell 1 length back of Harvard. Coming up to the 500. Right around now, it's Dartmouth still holding on to a narrow lead, and Harvard making a nice adjustment and getting their bow past Yale and Princeton now. So Harvard running in second, Yale and Princeton falling back about a deck or 2, and Cornell has not lost any more ground, but still 1 length back of Yale at this point. Dartmouth steady as she goes. 36 for Dartmouth. Harvard looks to be a little high, 35 and a half. So those are the 2 emerging crews right now, Harvard and Dartmouth. Harvard is trying dearly to catch the big green out front. Princeton's running in third, about a half a length up on Yale. And Cornell has come back, overlapping on Yale now, about 2/3 of a length back of Yale. 7:50 into the race, still Dartmouth. Dartmouth out front, and looks like Dartmouth is taking a big push here. And whether Harvard notices or not, because Dartmouth has now got 5 seats on Harvard. Harvard has 6 seats on Princeton. Princeton has a length on Yale and Cornell. Yale and Cornell running about level now. So Cornell definitely come up, or Yale has come back or dropped back a little bit. But halfway, it's the big green in secure position there out front in lane 1. Harvard 1 length back now. So Dartmouth had a pretty nice push. And continue to march. Harvard a splash of open behind Dartmouth, and then Princeton running in third, about a full length up on Cornell, with Yale now trailing. Dartmouth looked like they had a cautious, although they led from the wire, they had a cautious first 1,000 meters and has really turned it on here. And now Harvard is going to try and level up with them, but it's a solid length advantage for Dartmouth. And then it's still Harvard in second, Princeton in third, a full length back of Harvard. Cornell just a splash of open behind Princeton, and Yale falling back into fifth. Coming up to 500 meters to go, Dartmouth on the inside, looking very strong. About to turn it over to the finish line tower, or not a tower, I guess a tent, and over to you at the finish.
All right, so there it is, your Big Green in the lead in this first race of the morning. Out there, lane number 1, closest to the shore as we look on the camera view coming down the course. You can see the Big Green there in lane number 1, looking long and strong. Very strong strokes from that crew from Dartmouth. Here's a quick look at the Harvard crew from the drone. Great rowing from the Harvard lightweights. You can see just moving well in that solid second position here. We've got a good race going, good overlap going on between the rest of the field right now. And then in the lightweight boats here, it's first, second, and third going on to the grand final.
Fred, this is Willie. Fred, this is Willie. You
so
can't talk to me,
Harvard
but I can talk
from
to
up
you.
above right now. We got a good picture.
You need to
of
wait
Harvard
until
just
Colleen
this
and
last
Steve
final
toss
500
it
meters
to you
here.
before
And you can see
you
Dartmouth
start
now
announcing.
as we come up along the beach. Dartmouth is looking very, very nice here. Smooth, good control. Some of the top guys from the Dartmouth program led by Coach Dan Rook. Very strong here, and 250 meters to go. Harvard in that solid second position. Looks like we might have a good fight coming for third place, though, as we get that last qualifying spot. So in the outside, there's Cornell and Princeton in 2. So Dartmouth is your clear leader coming across the line now. We have Dartmouth in first, Harvard in a solid second, and it's going to be very close. Princeton and Cornell, and we're going to have to take a look at that one. But the Princeton and Cornell race for that final qualifying spot. Very close, tight race there. So, and the Yale guys finishing off in 5th position. So that's heat number 1 of the day. The men's lightweight varsity fours with Dartmouth taking that win over Harvard. And we're going to have to take a look at those official race results to see that third qualifying spot, Princeton or Cornell. So we'll head back up to the start shortly, but a good race to start off the morning. The men's varsity lightweight straight fours heat 2 coming up next. We got an 8:10 start time with lane number 1, Georgetown. Lane 2, Mercyhurst. Pennsylvania in 3, Columbia in 4, and the Navy lightweights out in lane 5. We'll be back up to the start shortly for another exciting IRA heat.
And back up at the start. Beautiful shot of these crews lined up. This is heat number 2 of the men's lightweight straight 4. So again, these are shells without a coxswain. So a little bit of an added challenge for these collegiate athletes to be steering the boat and of course executing on the race plan.
Yeah, in heat number one, we saw a good job by all the crews staying within their lanes. Everybody did a nice job controlling the boat. If you're not familiar with straight fours or straight boat rowing, usually one of the guys in the boat will have the tow steering. So the 3-seat usually, sometimes stroke, has an ability to steer the crew down the lane, make little adjustments to the race, to the course. But here at Lake Natoma, you got a beautiful race course. Great clear marked buoys all the way down. So a very easy course for these athletes to manage. And they've spent the last few weeks now practicing in these straight fours and really working on what they can do to keep their boat going right down the race course, not getting into the buoy line or tangled up at all. So again, let's go through our lineup here. You can see the crews just sitting up at the start, up near the bluff, up at the top of Lake Natoma here. So Georgetown, the guys in lane number 1. We got Georgetown next to them, Mercyhurst, and Pennsylvania in 3, Columbia in 4, and the Navy Lightweights in lane 5. So we got 5 boats with 3 to advance to Sunday's grand final.
Now, awaiting the start, this is the 8:10 a.m. race, so we should have a start underway at any moment. Quick run of times from heat number 1. Again, the progression is 3 to advance to the grand final. That was Dartmouth, Harvard, and Princeton. Dartmouth with the winning time of a 6:12, Harvard 6:15.1, Princeton 6:17.6. Cornell taking 4th. They'll be in the petite final. They finished 6:17.9, so just behind Princeton and then Yale. But for now, we have a race underway. The men's lightweight straight 4. This is heat number 2, and it's top 3 to advance to the grand final. It's Georgetown, Mercyhurst, Pennsylvania, Columbia, and Navy. And a strong start for Navy out of lane 5. If you're looking at the Jumbotron or you're with us online on screen, you can see the Navy shell on the bottom right side. And of course, now we flip over to a beautiful shot on the water.
Yeah, so the midshipmen, you can see, taking off, getting a good start there. The midshipmen with the early lead here in heat number 2 of this second heat of the IRA lightweight straight 4. So we've got a good race going on. You can see in the lane number 2 there, Mercyhurst and Georgetown up close with Navy. So it looks like a Mercyhurst and Navy lead right now, but not a whole lot separating the field. Columbia out there, Georgetown as well. Everybody staying well within this race. Penn just trailing the pack a little bit, but Navy looks to have taken that lead and running away pretty well right now for the midshipmen.
And Navy just looking so strong. A beautiful shot here, a nice solid mid-drive. That rhythm just really working for them. A good start from Navy, certainly making a statement now as they move through the first 500 meters. They now are just barely into open water. So Navy starts to assert themselves early on, and the question then becomes who will take those second and third qualifying positions. Fred, will hand it over to you on the water.
All right, as you say, Navy is taking off in the second 500. They established a good rhythm and had the lead early, so the crews are truly spreading out now. Columbia running in second. In lane 4 out here on the outside next to Navy. Then it's back over to Mercyhurst, would be running in 3rd, Pennsylvania 4, and Georgetown 5. So the Navy midshipmen pouring it on here have about a half a length open water over a Columbia. And steady as she goes for the middies. Columbia here, let's get a rating check on them. About 34.5. Navy really strong here, just pushing away. Let's see if I got their rating correct here. About 37, so they're a couple beats, 3 beats higher than Columbia. Penn has come back now, is pushing in the middle of the course to take over that 3rd spot. They're looking not quite yet in 3rd. Mercyhurst still has a slight advantage. So a good fight developing for second as those 3 crews tighten up, Columbia, Penn, and Mercyhurst. Navy all by themselves. Looked like they've been eating steak and eggs down at Bancroft Hall to try and keep their weight lean, and they are turning over. They're aggressive and having a good time way out half open water. So right now, Columbia securely in second. Oops, a couple of a digger there on the starboard side of Columbia has enabled Pennsylvania to move up a little bit more. Penn taking a big press here to get ahead of Mercyhurst, but those bows are very close to one another. So those three crews tightening up now, Columbia, Penn, and Mercyhurst, with Georgetown trailing a splash of open behind those three. Don't hear a lot of noise out of the Navy crew. They should be having a good time out front there. Always good when you can row 2 or 3 lengths open water ahead of your competition. Let's see if they can hold it now with about 550 meters to go. It's Navy way out there. And Pennsylvania has poked their bow into second. Pennsylvania now working through Columbia. Just, it's seesawing back and forth. So we'll get ready to toss it to the finish line again. Over to you at the finish.
And thank you very much, Fred. What an exciting race. Of course, as we heard Navy and saw from the drone and from the shot from the side of the launch, what a start and just an execution from Navy. Of course, the question then becomes who will capture those the last two critical qualifying positions. That's second and third. So we see a nice push from Penn right now out of lane 3. Good power, certainly looking to assert themselves as one of those crews. Mercyhurst just to the left of them, and then Columbia on the other side. Georgetown now a little bit off the pace, but what a start from Navy, Steve, and it's looking like it's going to be a great finish as they come down.
Yeah, Navy in the final 500 meters here with Penn kind of coming back from a little bit of a shakier start, but done a great job through the middle 1,000 and into this last 500 meters. Penn really trying to make sure they move on to that qualifying for the grand final. But the Navy midshipmen out in front with that 2 to 3 length lead, as Fred talked about, and there's a high expectation in the Navy lightweight program for these lower boats. Great depth from the midshipmen. Coach Sean Bagnall was saying that it was quick turnaround after sprints to go and make selections, get into the lineups, and really start practicing these smaller boats that they haven't really been in all spring. But the midshipmen have done an excellent job at practice. They've proven it on the race course this morning. So there's Navy across the line first. Tight race here with Pennsylvania,
Wow.
Mercyhurst, and
finish.
Columbia very close. 3
Whew.
crews going through to the grand final. And Georgetown wrapping up the finish here in lane number 1. So it was clearly the Naval Academy in first, Pennsylvania, Mercyhurst, and Columbia in those trailing second, third, and fourth positions. But 3 crews will be advancing to the grand finals on Sunday. So a great start to racing here at the IRAs here in 2019. We've got some of our main events coming up next. We got the heavyweight men's varsity 8s coming up at 8:20. We have heat number 1. Last year's national champions from Yale in lane number 1, Boston University in 2, Syracuse in 3, Pennsylvania in 4, Wisconsin in 5, and Santa Clara in lane number 6. That's going to be heat number 1 of the men's varsity 8 coming up at 8:20. So you can see one of the crews heading back to the start platform right now. All the other crews getting locked on and ready to go. So we're going to be out for the start of the men's heavyweight heats of the Varsity 8 coming up next. right, so a great view from the drone up at the start line. We've got all these crews getting ready to go, backing into the start here. Wisconsin's guys, you can see the red blades from Wisconsin just backing into the lane number 5. So going from left to right on your screen right now, it's Yale, Boston U, Syracuse, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Santa Clara. So Yale's coming off their big win at the Eastern Sprints, coming off that victory of Eastern Sprints, last year's national championship. An undefeated 2019 season for the Bulldogs. Yale's done a phenomenal job. Coach Gladstone leading the young men from Yale for his 9th season. So Yale in lane number 1. Boston University is the next seed there. They're the 8th seed overall in lane number 2. And we got Syracuse, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Santa Clara. So Syracuse really looking to see what they can do. Can they advance to the finals today? Can they make a race of it this morning? Pennsylvania and Wisconsin also both trying to take another step from their Eastern Sprints results, but the crews are locked in now at the start. Colleen, how's it looking?
So exciting. Just such an exciting moment here for these athletes as they sit up at the start line. They've trained all year for this. Certainly the gruel of winter training. It's absolutely beautiful, which, as we all know, especially on the East Coast, doesn't often happen with spring racing. So this is truly the moment that some of these seniors, of course, in these Varsity 8s have been preparing for really 4 years. So they're sitting up at the catch. They're under starters' orders, waiting for that go signal. And just so much excitement. And as I say that, we have a race underway. This is the men's Varsity 8 Heat 1, Yale, Boston, Syracuse, Penn, Wisconsin, Santa Clara, and Yale, as you mentioned, Steve, just such power from them at the Eastern Sprints Championship and truly all season. So look at this undefeated crew take off.
Yeah, Yale's strong point all season has been this start. They've really gone after it, attacked it. They did it at the Crew Classic against California. They've been doing it all season throughout their duels and at Eastern Sprints, and you can see 2-seat and 3-seat sliding away from bows number 2 and 3. Syracuse doing a nice job early to stay right bow to bow with that crew from Boston University, but Yale showing that assertive, powerful start, incredibly aggressive from Yale off the start. So some good experience in that Yale boat. We've got a lot of returners from the national championship crews the last couple years, led by that senior Charlie Elwes from the UK in the 6th seat. Incredible power coming down from that Yale boat, and it looks like even in this early running, we are seeing Yale just taking away and almost a length right now for Yale. So Fred, let's head on out to the water and see how it looks for you.
Okay, picking them up at 500. It's the Bulldogs out front again, really establishing a quick lead here, breaking a little bit of open water on Boston. Boston University now getting the best out of second place there, has taken a strong push to get about a half a length on Syracuse. Then it's over to Wisconsin in that 4th spot. Wisconsin really trying to work hard to get on the Big Orange. Then it's back to Penn, and then Santa Clara just a few seats back behind Penn. Yale looking long and strong. Let's get a rating check on them. Probably 36.5. That's kind of where Coach Gladstone likes to have this very experienced crew, all international crew, charge down the courses. They've got about a quarter length open now. BU has a strong second place lead now, 8 seats over Syracuse and Wisconsin, trying to level up with the Orangemen. Pennsylvania about 2/3 of a length behind Syracuse, half a length or so behind Wisconsin, not quite able to get in front of the Orangemen. I think Syracuse taking a big press right here. Get a rating check on the Terriers and see what we got there. Looks like they're taking a flutter, 37.5, or that's just a strong base for them. And they are really pushing away now from Syracuse and Wisconsin. Yale continues to march. That's sort of a foregone conclusion. Your number 1 seed looking very, very strong. So the race is for third, and the Orangemen now have put on a spurt to get another couple seats on the Badgers. But the Badgers will not be denied. They're trying to answer that. Pennsylvania's been scratching away, trying to get up with those two. But so far, they're about 6 or 7 seats back of Wisconsin. Santa Clara, just about a splash of open behind Penn. So the field is spreading out. Yale now hasn't really moved on BU anymore right now in the third 500, but it's still a third of a length open to a half, maybe a third of a length open as we approach 500 meters to go. The Terriers looking strong, open water over Wisco and Syracuse. We're going to go a little bit deeper in this third or fourth 500 here to see if Wisco can move up, and they're challenging Syracuse for that third spot. Here they come. Camera, quick shot across. Can the Badgers catch the Orangemen? They're level. I'd still say Syracuse has the advantage as we get ready to toss it over to the tent at the finish line in that order.
Thank you very much, Fred. And an exciting heat. Again, heat one of the men's Varsity 8 now coming down the course. As you rightly said, a good start from Yale. Sheer power in the body of the race. And as they come through, it is Yale currently leading. It's Boston University in second, and we can just see the crowd mounting from shore, Steve.
Yeah, exciting race from Yale there. A great start. Now they're just cruising. They got that comfortable, powerful press coming from the Yale crew in lane number one. Good experience in that crew. You got the 4 sophomores in the bow 4 of that boat. Orlando Nixon, the bow seat, going to be crossing the line first for the Bulldogs. You can see in there 7-seat Leonard Jenkins, part of the Jenkins brothers who are out here practically racing in a Jenkins Family Cup race, because you got over there in the Boston University boat and bow Elliot Jenkins in the BU crew. So 2 brothers crossing the line in first and second. Yale in first, Boston University in second, Syracuse holding off Wisconsin. And Wisconsin turning the result on Pennsylvania from their Eastern sprints, where Wisconsin was just behind Pennsylvania. So a nice row by the Badgers. Santa Clara finishing up in 6th position in heat number 1 of the men's Varsity 8. So that was a good, nice, strong first 500 from Yale. Aggressive. You saw them really take control of the race immediately and cruise through the finish line. So up next, we got the number 2 seed, Washington Huskies, in lane number 1, closest to the shore. The Huskies from Northeastern in lane number 2, right next to them. Cornell in 3, Columbia in 4, Oregon State in 5, and UC San Diego in lane number 6. So back up to the start, you can see just cruise backing in, getting ready to go. But a great race in that first race. Nice job by Yale to take the lead, control the race, comfortable, long, strong rowing from the crew that Coach Gladstone's tuned up all year. They are looking very good here at Lake Natoma.
And now approaching the start of heat number 2, just to remind everyone on the progression here, with 4 heats, it is the winner of the race, and whoever comes in second to advance to semifinal 1 or 2, with the remaining crews relegated to the repechage. So, of course, there is motivation to finish in one of those top 2 spots, to skip a race this afternoon, stay off your feet and rest up. In the race that we just saw go by in heat number 1, that was Yale and Boston, though, of course, a good press from Syracuse over Penn, then Wisconsin and Santa Clara. We'll have times for heat number 1 in just a moment, but we'll bring our attention back up to the start for heat number 2.
All right, so the Huskies there in lane number 1, coming off their win at the Pac-12 Championships. Like Yale, they are undefeated on the 2019 season. The Huskies have done a nice job. They had Boston University out to the Windermere Cup at the Montlake Cut, and the German national team squad as well. And the Huskies came away with a great win there at Montlake. Raced an excellent dual race against California. early in the season. They were out at Lake Las Vegas with Cornell, Oregon State, and Marist in a very early season contest down in Las Vegas that the Huskies came away on top. So the Huskies have been looking good all year, as have the Huskies next to them from Northeastern. Northeastern's guys had a nice go at it at Eastern Sprints, finishing in the 5th position, just ahead of Boston University and about just over a second behind Princeton. But a good race expected from Northeastern's Huskies as well. And we got in lane number 3 next to them, Cornell, Columbia, Oregon State, and UC San Diego. So heat number 2 of the men's varsity 8s coming up next with 2 boats going to that semifinal. The remainder will head to the afternoon repechage. But we see some great racing coming up all day here at Lake Natoma.
So just a quick read of times. We'll see how many we get through before the start of heat number 2. As we saw, it was Yale, 5:38.3. Boston finishing second, 5:41.3. Syracuse third, 5:54.4. Wisco with a 5:45.7. Pennsylvania in fifth, 5:51.8. And Santa Clara in sixth at a 5:56.8.
All right, so the crews are sitting easy right now. Blades buried, but everybody getting amped up for the start of this heat number 2. So you can see from the screen here, looking at the top of your screen from this drone view, Washington is on the left-hand side in the upper side, all the way down to UC San Diego, closest to us.
What a start from Washington.
Yeah, so Washington's looking to get that start just like Yale did. Really get off the line quick, fast, and aggressive. Washington's been kind of trying to get that start going quicker and quicker since the California duel. They did a nice job at the Windermere Cup and at the Pac-12 championships. Aggressiveness, fluid catches, everybody moving together. Stroke seat, Andrew Gard just leading these dogs down the race course. Cox and Adam Gold just taking a control of this crew and really getting great power from the big Huskies from Seattle right there. So good start from Washington. Northeastern sticking right with them. Northeastern with a great aggressive start to take a few seats on the rest of the field and clearly put themselves in that second position.
And of course, Steve, as you said, it is that second qualifying position that's just so critical in this race to advance straight to the semis and skip those repechage in that race this afternoon. So a solid start from Washington, but Northeastern certainly making it known that they want to be that second crew to go with them. That leaves Cornell, Columbia, Oregon State, and UCSD as we move through the first 500 meters.
Well, we got the Washington crew out in the lead with Northeastern in a clear second. Good racing going on between Cornell, Columbia, Oregon State, but the Huskies from Washington and the Huskies from Northeastern taking those 2 controlling positions to take into the semifinals. So, Fred, let's go out to the water and check out how things look.
Okay, we'll pick it up here in the middle of the second 500. It is the Huskies from Seattle, about 7 or 8 seats, maybe a little bit more than that, up on the Huskies from Boston. So it's spreading out. Those 2 are the obvious front runners in the seated side. Cornell about a length back of Northeastern. Then it's a dogfight with Columbia and Oregon State, just a couple seats apart, and San Diego not far behind either, about a half a length behind Oregon State. So the Huskies trying to get away, the Washington Huskies from the Boston Huskies, about to break a full length here as we go through the 1,000 meters. Get a rating check on these guys. 36 for the dogs from Seattle. They went out hard around 42. So the Huskies from Boston a bit higher, 38 or so, 38 and a half. So working a little bit harder. Now I've got them at 36. So those 2 very much in comfortable positions, 1 and 2. Let's see what's developing back here in the pack with Cornell, Columbia, and Oregon State. First time I've had a look at Oregon State. They're working hard to draw up level with Columbia, about a third of a length back. Cornell now establishing a solid third place position with Coxon on bow of Columbia. White Blades of Washington still out front. They haven't been able to quite break away from the Huskies from Boston. Very strong. I've seen the Northeastern crew row, obviously at the sprints and then in some dual races. They've got some really strong athletes in there, and it's just a matter of time before they put it all together. And obviously championship time today and this weekend is the time to make it all click. And they look quite good, those Northeastern boys. Cornell being challenged a little bit more by Columbia now as we go into the fourth 500. We'll go a little bit deeper here with you. Columbia stretching it on Oregon State, and San Diego now trailing in that 6th spot. So we'll toss it back to the finish line with the Huskies from Seattle. A little bit of water now over Northern. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Fred. So the Huskies out in front. Washington with the lead, just cruising, just like Yale did, cruising in along the beach here in lane number 1. So Washington Huskies looking very sharp in their first race of the morning for the Huskies. And Northeastern doing a great job there in lane number 2 to secure their spot into the semifinals. That was job number 1 for Coach Pajednik's crew, was make sure you advance into that semifinal. So they are doing their job this morning, rowing well, really stretching out that lead and getting out in front of Cornell, Columbia, Oregon State, and UC San Diego. So again, we got 2 crews advancing to the semifinals. It's Washington and Northeastern looking clearly to be the 2 crews to advance. The Huskies looking very strong here. Good length from Washington as they cross the finish line comfortably.
And Callahan for the 3rd year in a row earning top honors from the Pac-12. Evidenced here, of course, by that strong win from his Washington crew. Northeastern captures 2nd to advance directly to the semis, with the remaining crews relegated to the repechage. So phenomenal racing. That's heat number 2, with Washington and Northeastern advancing directly to the semis, along with Yale and Boston University from heat number 1. So great racing from these Varsity 8s.
Yeah, so good race from Washington Northeastern there. California coming up in heat number 3. We have the guys from Berkeley, California, Princeton, Dartmouth, Stanford, Florida Tech, and Hobart in heat number 3. So 2 crews from each advancing, so we'll fill out 8 of the 12 semifinal spots determined through the heats this morning. Those 4 remaining will be determined in the afternoon reps, where it will be 1 crew from each of the reps this afternoon advancing into that semifinal, assuring them at least a top 12 finish, which for a lot of these teams is a really critical placement. So we've got good racing going on all morning here. The Washington and Northeastern moving through to the semifinals, along with Yale and Boston University from that first heat.
Huskies and Huskies, I like it. Coming out of heat number 2.
So we've got heat number 3 coming up. California, your 30 seed. And Princeton, the 6 seed. Dartmouth, Dartmouth, Stanford, FIT, and Hobart there. So that's heat number 3. We've got a picture up at the start line. You can see the crews just getting settled into the starting platform. It's just, if you haven't been to the race course here at Lake Natoma, the Sac State Aquatic Center, it's a phenomenal venue. You have a great spectator area. You have a really very high-end, high-quality racing. The starting platform and the race course are top-notch, as best as you'll see in the United States. So an excellent place to host this IRA National Championship. So we're back up to the start here, just waiting the start of heat number 3 of the men's Varsity 8. Coming up, we've got the heat number 3, California, Princeton, Dartmouth, Stanford, FIT, and Hobart. We'll look to see if some of these crews can maybe make a little bit of an inroad into the top 2 seeds, California and Princeton. Can Dartmouth and Stanford put it together? Stanford's got a pretty talented crew. They've been really sticking together. this season, placing third at the Pac-12 championships behind Washington and Cal. Princeton doing a good job just outside of the medalist positions at the Eastern Sprints for the Princeton Varsity 8, just ahead of that crew from Northeastern. So we're waiting for the start of this heat number 3. We'll be back up to it very shortly. So once we get the drone view, I'll kind of turn us back on and go to you, and we can kind of start talking about them. So California's lineups, they did a big shakeup of lineup stuff. So actually, yeah, why don't you kind of do a quick setup of it and then toss it to me, and I'll talk Cal before the start. Okay. So.
And back up at the start, awaiting at the start of heat number 3 of the men's Varsity 8's quick read of times. Washington in heat number 2, 5:35.0. Northeastern at a 5:41.5. So those two, again, advancing directly to the semis. Then Cornell, Columbia, Oregon State, and UCSD. So we get close to the start of heat number 3. We'll bring our attention back up there. Again, Cal, Princeton, Dartmouth, Stanford, FIT, and Hobart
Maybe we'll head up a little bit here. More of a margin shot between Princeton and Cal. Princeton winding it up a little bit. Would love to come up on Cal and challenge them. About 39 now for the Tigers. Not afraid to wind it up with 500 meters to go. So we'll carry it a little bit further into the fourth 500 here. With those margins pretty much unchanged. 1, 2, and 3, Cal, Princeton, and Dartmouth. And then we'll let our launch slow down here and we'll pick up the rest of the field. Like Stanford in fourth. FIT and Hobart rounding out the field. So over to the finish line.
All right, so there's California looking good, looking strong for the Bears from Berkeley, doing a nice job. Princeton's kind of trying to take that rate, just kicking it along. Princeton looking good, comfortable lead over Dartmouth. A great view in the corner of the picture of Dartmouth there. But along the beach here, we've got a good shot now across the field. You can see California, Princeton clearly in the lead, kind of replicating those first two heats where we had that lane number 1, Yale and Washington clearly in the lead. California repeating that as well. So we've got two clear boats going into the semifinals now. The crew from California, Coach Scott Franson in his first year as head coach, longtime California Golden Bear leading the Bears here. And got to be happy with this result here in the heat. So California crossing the line first. Open water just ahead of Princeton. Princeton with a little bit more gap towards Dartmouth. And Stanford in that fourth position, about a half a length to 6 seats ahead of FIT, and Hobart rounding out the field of 6 boats. So the third heat of the men's Varsity 8, we got 2 crews advancing into that semifinal. It's California and Princeton moving into the semis. Dartmouth, Stanford, FIT, and Hobart will be in the reps this afternoon. The Bears looking pretty good, comfortable as they finish that race. Nice race by California to take another spot into the semifinals. We've got one more heat of the men's Varsity 8s coming up at the 850 race. Heat number 4. We've got Harvard, Brown, Navy, GW, Colgate, and Drexel. So 6-boat race coming up for Varsity 8 heat number 4. Colgate coming into this IRA Varsity 8 field for the first time. Great job at the Dad Vale Regatta by the men from Colgate. George Washington, Naval Academy, Brown, and Harvard all coming in from the Eastern Sprints League. Drexel also from Dad Vales as well. So all these crews familiar with each other, racing each other throughout the season. We've seen some good racing this morning from fast starting crews in lane number 1. Those first, second, and third seeds doing their job exactly as expected and really taking control of the race off aggressive, clean starts and moving away down through the first 1,000 meters and really just holding on, being long, strong, and comfortable in the second 1,000. So we'll see if Harvard, the 4 seed, can do the same thing. Brown, the 5 seed, should be really pressing Harvard the whole way down the race course. See if the boys from the Naval Academy can get in the mix there. George Washington with a pretty good season by their Varsity 8, seeing what they can do in this heat number 4. So heat number 4 of the men's Varsity 8s, we'll be following it up with some, I'm very excited for these next 2 races. The men's Varsity Lightweight heat number 1 at 9 a.m. and men's Varsity Lightweight heat number 2 at 9:10. So coming up next, we've got heat number 4 of the men's varsity. You can see crews just backing down, and we got some results from that last heat.
Yeah, so results are in from heat number 3, the race we just saw go by. It was California to win with a winning time of 5:37.3. Just looking so strong as they came through the line. I had them about a 35 and a half. It was Princeton to capture that second qualifying position for the semis at a 5:41.5. Then Dartmouth 5:46.9. Stanford 5:51.3. FIT 5:53.6 and Hobart 5:57. .4. So Cal and Princeton will advance with Washington, Northeastern, Boston, and Yale to the semis. Back up at the start, though, it's the final heat of the men's Varsity 8. That's heat number 4, the 8:50 a.m. race with Harvard, Brown, Navy, George Washington, Colgate, and Drexel.
Yep, so we've got the guys from Harvard there in lane number 1, fourth seed here in the Varsity 8. They finished second to Yale at Eastern Sprints this year. Yale had that great race into the headwind, kind of opened up the margin a little bit more. This Harvard crew is very talented, a lot of freshmen, but some truly elite level guys in this first lane number 1 crew for Harvard. So the Harvard guys lining up right next to Brown, their Ivy League rivals. Navy in 3, George Washington 4, Colgate and Drexel on the outside.
And I think, Steve, this is the first time that Harvard will really test their speed against the West Coast.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's a good time to get out of conference racing. You're getting back to the West Coast and see how you stack up against the whole field. So we're up at the start. You can see a good drone view looking down at that starting platform here, Lake Natoma, California. Good, gorgeous conditions this morning. A lot better than they had for the Pac-12 championships just a couple weeks ago. If you caught any of that action or saw the photos, it was a bit of a mess. Cloudy, rainy, windy day for the Pac-12 championships. Nothing like that this morning. We have a start. We'll see what can Harvard do. Can Brown match their speed off the start? Can Navy and George Washington and Colgate and Drexel throw in a challenge to these high seeds? But Harvard in lane number 1 with Brown right next to them. Those two crews trying to take off and do what we saw in the first couple of heats in the Varsity 8.
And I think Navy not to be left out. If there's anything we know about Navy, it's that team just has incredible depth year after year, and they row aggressively on both the heavyweight side and, of course, on the lightweight side as well. So keeping an eye on Navy for sure in these first 500 and 1,000 meters or so. And a quick note about Colgate out of lane 5. So Colgate's Varsity 8 won the Jefferson-Dadville Regatta. For the first time in program history, they set a course record in the process. So just phenomenal to see them here at the IRA and in heat number 4. Harvard out ahead, Steve, no doubt about it.
Yeah, we're seeing kind of a replica of the first 3 heats with these top 4 seeds, these truly elite crews from California, Washington, Yale in the first 3, Harvard duplicating exactly what they've done. And look at that. You can see the bow of Brown's crew in lane number 2, Harvard pressing away. And right now, Harvard's stern clearing the bow ball of that crew from Brown. So just great racing from the guys. The Crimson really owning this one early on. You could see just good power coming from that Harvard boat. Good catches, excellent rowing by the guys from Harvard. Brown just holding on tight, trying to kind of stick with them, get into that qualifying position. That's the job number 1 for Brown. Make sure you qualify into that semifinal. So Harvard looking like they want that lead. They've got it going really well. Brown in that clear second position. The rest of the field staying pretty tightly packed. Fred, how's the rest of that field looking?
I'm really impressed by Harvard's start. They rode 41 to the 500, and now they've finally taken the rating down a little bit, but they are really out here to make a statement. I'm going to be very curious to see what their finish time is. They're 37 and a half now, but they left Brown in their tracks at the start. They totally took off. So the race is developing now for third between GW and the Naval Academy. That's a really exciting race there. A couple seats apart. GW having a really good season, as we know, is challenging the midshipmen. Then it's over to Colgate, another very impressive young bunch of guys who qualified for nationals here, and they're getting the best of Drexel, whom they nipped at the Dad Vales. So, but look at Harvard go. If the cameras span out to the leader again, those guys are on fire. They've really had a good sprints finish, finishing second to Yale, which is, their challenge this year. And then we've got the Harvard-Yale race weeks from today. But Harvard really pressing out very impressively. That's Brown is a very strong crew, and for Harvard to walk away from them like that in the first 1250 it says something to me. Brown here, let's get a rating check. They're at 37.5 also. Navy getting a little bit more bite now over GW. Let's see here what the Naval Academy is, probably 37 or so, 38 for Navy. But Harvard now a quarter length open over Brown. Brown was third at the sprints. I don't remember the margin exactly, but it was this big a margin. Here they come. Can GW come up? But so far, the cruise margins are as we cross the 500-meter mark. Harvard looking very polished and strong. Definitely from the folk took off. We'll get ready to toss it over to you, Colleen and Steve, at the finish in that order. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Fred. Yes, Harvard looking very strong coming down the course now. They got out early. They asserted themselves early on in the race, making it known that they want to be one of those top two crews to advance. Brown looking strong as well. The Navy, George Washington, Colgate, and Drexel. Of course, Harvard and Brown, no strangers to each other up in the Northeast. They raced, of course, on the Charles River in mid-April, and it was Harvard over Brown that day. Harvard was ranked third at the time and Brown fifth. So they've had a chance to see each other's race strategies, and of course are certainly East Coast rivals. As they come through the shore, though, Steve, Harvard just looking strong. It's looking like Harvard and Brown.
Yeah, Harvard comfortable, just like we've seen in the first three heats, just Harvard out cruising in front there. Brown with a little bit more pressure on them from Navy and GW. GW wants to press Navy all the way to the line, though. So a good race from GW and Navy coming across the line, and there's Harvard over the line, Brown next. And it's very tight between Navy and George Washington, but a good, excellent race from GW. We're going to have to look and see how that race result turns out. But very good racing coming from GW, really challenging the crew from the Naval Academy. Brown there in that second position, solidly qualifying for the semifinals. So you got your four crews that are advanced to the semifinals for the men's varsity eights. You got Yale and BU from Heat 1. Washington and Northeastern from Heat 2, California and Princeton from 3, and Harvard and Brown from Heat number 4. So those 8 crews will have 4 crews joining them from this afternoon's repechage for the semifinals on Saturday here at the IRA Regatta. So I think the heavyweight Varsity 8 semifinals are usually some of the best races of this whole regatta. You get to see incredible intensity just to make that grand final and earn a spot into the top 6 in the country. So talking about intensity, though, we are expecting possibly some of the best racing of the weekend coming up in these next 2 races. I'm excited for these 2. We've got the varsity lightweight 8s coming up next. We got the 9 a.m. heat number 1 and 9:10 heat number 2. We've got Pennsylvania, the Eastern Sprints winners. First time since 1976 that Pennsylvania came away with the Eastern Sprints win. They're in lane number 1 of heat number 1. Princeton right next to them, Columbia and Harvard in heat number 1 of the lightweight 8 coming up next. So we got a nice shot of the crews that have just wrapped up their race. Gonna go to hit a little cool down, get ready for some of these crews to race the afternoon reps. They've got to get rested, get their guys fed and ready to come back down to the race course and see what they can do to make it into those semifinal races with a good performance this afternoon in the reps.
And awaiting the start of the 9 a.m. race. If you're on the beach, of course, you can see Yale and Dartmouth rowing by. So a nice conclusion to the heats of the men's Varsity 8, and just such fierce competition. I love the way, I think it was the George Washington coxswain taking a moment to celebrate with his stroke seat. So of course they're relegated to the repechage, but a great race for them, and just wonderful to see such fierce competitive racing. Coming up, though, the 9 a.m. race is the men's varsity lightweight 8, heat number 1, with Penn, Princeton, Columbia, and Harvard. As Steve told us, what a race from Pennsylvania to win the Eastern Sprints, the first time since 1976. I had the pleasure of commentating there, along with Fred Schock, who, of course, you can hear on the water. So University of Pennsylvania won sprints by 2 seconds over second place Yale, and out of lane 6, which is not necessarily a favored lane at the Eastern Sprints. They came in that day tied for the 5th place seed, so they certainly outperformed their seed, and just had a phenomenal race. Anybody that was there can certainly attest to that. Powerful start, open water lead before the 500 meters down, and they really never looked back. They just held. So great to see them here at the IRA. We'll be interested to see what kind of speed they've gained over the last couple of weeks in practice. No doubt about it, though, Steve, I think Princeton will be right with them, certainly out of the gate, and we'll see how the race unfolds.
Yeah, Coach Marty Karati's guys are going to really challenge Pennsylvania here in this heat. It's going to be the 3 crews advancing directly to the final. The 4th place crew moves to a petite final. So it is a very important race this morning in the lightweight heats. So Pennsylvania was your winner at Eastern Sprints, followed by Yale, the Naval Academy, Princeton in 4th. Columbia in 5th, and Georgetown was your 6th place crew at sprints. We're going to have to see how things sort out here now with these same crews at the IRA National Championships. Columbia is your reigning champions for that 1922 trophy, which is the lightweight varsity 8 trophy for their champions. So Columbia came away with that last year from Mercer Lake. And got to see if Columbia can put together a great race today and on Sunday and maybe repeat, or could it be any one of these 8 teams in the lightweight varsity 8s? I really think that this is probably, of all the races that are run this weekend, this is probably the most wide open. I really think that there's 8 crews. All 8 could be in the medals. Really, all 8 have a chance to win if they've taken a good 2 weeks of training and got their crew a little bit faster. You're seeing a very even league here in the lightweight ranks.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, Steve, I love watching lightweight racing and commentating on lightweight racing. Unlike the open weight races, there is sort of that weight standard that sort of evens things out, if you will. We have a race underway, though, at the moment. So these lightweights are quick off the start. Not surprising there. So Penn, we're seeing that in the bottom of the screen on the right side. An aggressive start from them. We saw it from the Eastern Sprints. We're seeing it here at the
has taken over the lead, and Pennsylvania now is being challenged also by Princeton. Take a look here at Columbia's rating, 36 for Columbia as well. So that lead has changed. Columbia's starting to wind it up here a little bit, and a lot of race experience in that boat. But as Colleen pointed out earlier in the preamble, all of these crews weighing the same is kind of an equalizer, and Columbia has taken the lead. Princeton now has pushed the Quakers back by 3 seats. So here come the Tigers. Harvard just overlapping still, not quite, just a length behind Columbia and overlapping with Princeton and Pennsylvania. So quite a race here developing. Very good technical crews, all three of them. Columbia, I'll get ready to turn it over to you. Colleen, Columbia and Princeton, I'd watch them at the sprint. Over to you.
All right, so excellent racing. Columbia taking that lead. Princeton really trying to press here now as they get into that final 250 meters. You can see each of these spots really making a difference here. Harvard is not really letting these three off the hook, but it's looking like we got the three that are going to make it through. But Harvard has running out of room here, but Harvard's been trying since the 1,000-meter marks to kind of get that traction and move back into the three qualifying spots. Pennsylvania in the near lane, really ramping it up. Princeton trying to take that lead from Columbia. Can Columbia's experience from last year pay off, though? Columbia right now, it's Princeton, Columbia with Penn just behind them. Harvard coming up as fast as they can. But as we get to the line, it's a very tight race here. Lane number 3, Columbia. Lane number 2, Princeton. It's looking like Princeton with a mad sprint. Princeton by a deck over Columbia. Pennsylvania, then Harvard. So tight racing here in the lightweight heat, which we were fully expecting. Great race from Princeton, putting it together all the way down the course, staying right there, disciplined through that first 500 meters, strong in the middle 1,000, and then attacking and just going after that in the final 500. So excellent race from Princeton, great race from Columbia and Pennsylvania. Those three crews moving through to your Sunday grand final, fighting for a national championship in the men's varsity lightweight 8. So up next, we're heading back up to the start. I think we're going to see another barn burner of a race here. Yale is in lane number 1, the Naval Academy in lane number 2, Georgetown in 3, and Cornell in lane 4. So it should be a great race here with 3 crews to advance from heat number 2 to join Princeton, Columbia, and Penn in the grand final for that 1922 trophy.
And a nice race from Columbia, I think, there too. Of course, Princeton as well. But Columbia, the lightweights are the defending national champions after winning the Varsity 8 last season. They've taken gold at the regatta the last 2 of the 3 years. So while they don't necessarily come in with the top seed, they've got a lot to prove and are reliably a very strong lightweight program. So a good race from Columbia as well.
Well, we're back up looking at the start line, waiting for a couple more crews to get backed into the starting platform. Once we get there, we'll have the Yale guys coming in lane number 1. They were second at Eastern Sprints, coming in the silver medal position behind Pennsylvania, 0.7 seconds ahead of Naval Academy, who's had kind of a good leading race, or race that's just they've been kind of pressing each race, getting a little notch better from the Naval Academy, and showing up for their best race of the season was probably at Eastern Sprints and coming into that bronze position for the midshipmen. And we've got Georgetown and Cornell in heat number 2. So Yale, Navy, Georgetown, and Cornell. Cornell, throughout most of the season, ranked number 1. A little bit of a tough heat for the Big Red there at Eastern Sprints. But they've probably got a little bit of revenge on their mind. I fully expect to see a 4-boat race all the way down the race course for 3 qualifying positions. Cornell out there in lane number 4, but with conditions like this, it's dead flat across all of the race course, start to finish, not even really a ripple of wind. excellent conditions to really match speed. So we could see any one of these four crews come away with a win. Any top three could be into that semifinal to match up for that national championship. So pretty exciting races coming up here. We've got the drone high in the air above the start, looking down at the starting platform from the top to bottom of your screen. It's Yale, Navy, Georgetown, and Cornell.
And Cornell, I think, will certainly have something to prove, Steve, as you mentioned. A bit surprising to see Cornell in the petite final at the Eastern Sprints Championships. They rode a very aggressive petite final, and they won the petite final by a solid margin. So I think they probably went into practice after the sprints and before the IRA, quite motivated to go after the result that they want at the IRA. So we'll see exactly what that is. And it all starts, of course, with the heats. So Yale, Navy, Georgetown, Cornell. And at the moment now, we have a race underway. That's heat number 2, and it's an aggressive start from all four crews, tightly packed. As I mentioned so often, as lightweight crews are, we'll see how this unfolds, but it's a good start and a clean start for all of these crews in the first 250.
Well, hey, it looks like Yale is trying to do exactly what the heavyweight counterparts from Yale did and trying to get this thing early, establish their position. So Yale in lane number 1, a great start from them, really moving out. We got 3 other crews that are essentially level, maybe Cornell just a deck off of Navy and Georgetown, but great racing here. Yale with a good start, quick and aggressive from Yale's lightweights. So really strong. You can see good quickness, really trying to hit that rate and spin as they go through this first 500 meters of the race course. So we've got Yale up there. It looks like Yale is, nearly a length. Maybe they're coxing on the bow balls of Georgetown with Cornell and Navy right there with them. So 3 crews to advance. Everybody's got to stay on their game the whole way down the 2K race course.
And of course, so much strategy in these heats, and especially when you know that there is no semifinal, there is no repechage. It's an advancement to the grand final or a relegation to the petite final. So all the more reason to truly get out ahead and stay ahead. The field's starting to separate a little bit now. Fred, we'll hand it over to you. You've got the best seat in the house. Let us know what you can see.
Okay, here we are picking it up in the middle of the second 500. Cornell is now trying to get back in the hunt here, get their bow ball in the second position. As you say, Yale had that aggressive start and looks pretty smooth, but we get them at 38. So those guys that's a comfortable 38. So Yale looking strong, but Cornell now starting to inch up. Bow on 7 seat. In third place is still the Naval Academy. Navy only a seat or so behind the Cornell Big Red. And then Georgetown, not to fun, well, just a half a length back of the Naval Academy. So the Big Red are starting to creep up as we go through the 1,000. And it's bow on 6 seat now. So they're beginning to find their bearings and press hard. Yale definitely took off, wanted to establish that early lead. And the Big Red went back to Ithaca after the sprints, try and sort a few things out. Navy looking strong in the middle as well. Let's get a rating check on the Big Red. 38.5 for the Big Red. And Yale still with a half a length lead, but Cornell coming up, but Navy coming right with them. Navy only a quarter of a length behind the Big Red. So good job for the midshipmen. 12:50 into the race. Will Cornell catch Yale? That's the question. Can they catch them? Can Navy draft right along with the Big Red? Georgetown slipping back a little bit now in 4th place. I think Cornell is just about to catch Yale. Here they come. I'd say Cornell has the lead now with about 5 strokes before the last 500. Big Red got a nice rhythm going here. They were patient in the first 750. Yale's not going to let them have it easily, though. Yale is challenging back, but I still think the Big Red have it. Let's see if the ratings have gone up. These lightweights can turn over. 37.5, 38 for the Big Red. And Navy trying to come up. Navy is definitely jacked up. And we'll turn it over to the tower.
All right, so yeah, Cornell getting a little bit of fight from the Big Red here coming through. So Cornell looking really good out in lane number 4. Something to prove for the Big Red, and Coach Chris Kerber certainly knows what he's doing with these guys. It's been a few national championships, 3 national championships for the Big Red in the last 5 years. So Cornell really trying their best out there in lane number 4. So furthest from the beach, Cornell on the lead right now. Lane number 1, Yale trying to challenge. We can see maybe a little bit of a wind-up from Yale to take away that number 1 position. The Naval Academy guys in a solid 3rd place to qualify. Georgetown trailing right now, but Cornell looking very good out there in front. The Big Red looking mean, looking ready for this heat this morning. So if they had trouble finding that power at their heat at Eastern Sprints, they have remedied that. They have come up with a solution. And Big Red looking very good right through the line. What a good race from Cornell. So Cornell with the lead. Yale in that 2nd position. The Naval Academy in 3rd to qualify into the grand final. Georgetown will move to that petite. So good race from Cornell. They were a little down off the start. Excellent middle 1,000 and a killer last 500 to move into that solid 1st place position. So as we thought, those lightweight 8 heats, excellent racing. So our first winner from lane number 4 of any of the races this morning. So Cornell doing their job, coming in seeded the lowest, but coming out on top of that heat number 2 of the varsity lightweight 8. So Colleen, that was great racing. We got, what do we got coming up next?
Yeah, up next at 9:20 a.m., so about 3 minutes to the start, we move back into the heavyweight category and over to the 2nd varsity 8s. So the men's 2nd varsity 8 heat 1 is up next, and we will see 4 heats. So a nice deep field for the men's 2nd varsity 8. In the 9:20 a.m. race, heat number 1, it's Washington out of lane 1, Northeastern University out of lane 2, Boston University out of lane 3, Wisconsin lane 4, and Drexel lane 5. And on the screen, we see these crews now locked into the gates, awaiting the start of this race. With less than 2 minutes to go, they should be under starters' orders.
Yeah, so we've got in that heat the Huskies, lane number 1 there. They're up next to those the Northeastern Huskies in lane number 2, just like we saw in the first heat, or the varsity 8s heat earlier today. But they're locked in at the start. Everybody looking like they got the blades buried now, so we'll head up to the drone view of them in just a second here. But the University of Washington, the 2V, very successful over the years in this Kennedy Cup races. So there's 29 wins for the Washington Huskies at the IRA in this Kennedy Cup. That's the most of any team. We got Cornell 2nd in that with 15 Kennedy Cups over the years. So since 1898, we've been racing this Kennedy Cup for the 2nd varsity. So Washington coming away with 12 of the last 15 of this 2nd varsity, showing the depth of the Husky program there in Seattle. So Washington in lane number 1, Northeastern in 2, Boston in 3, Wisconsin in 4, and Drexel in 5. So a 5-boat race, 2 crews advancing to the semifinals, the remainder to the reps. Waiting for the start here, looking like everybody's blades are bared. You got in the picture right now, we can see lane 2, 3, and 4. That'd be Northeastern, Boston, and Wisconsin. So those 3 crews in the middle there. We'll get up to the drone and get a bit wider picture with Washington and Drexel in there as well.
The Washington second varsity 8, of course, comes into the IRA undefeated, so a lot on the line for them, and we see now an aggressive start from all of these crews. We'd expect nothing else. It's Heat 1 of the men's second varsity 8, Washington, Northeastern, Boston, Wisconsin, and Drexel. Northeastern took 5th overall last year at the IRA, and as we know, with 4 heats and such depth in the field, it is just 2 to advance to the semis, with the remainder of these crews relegated to this afternoon's repechage. Washington making such a statement right now, Steve.
Yeah, that was just out of the start like a shotgun blast. Washington, Kimmons Wilson leading this crew. The Huskies just really aggressive off the start. Incredible power coming from this big Washington second varsity. Eli Meisner, the stroke seat of that 2V, just really taking off. You can see aggressiveness
color boat
and power
about 400
from the
meters.
Huskies
It's the
here
Huskies
early on.
over in lane 1, really taking off. Practically open water here, and then very tight between Northeastern, Boston, and Wisco. About a bow ball separating all 3 of those crews, with Drexel just a length behind. So we pass through the 500. It's Washington with miles of open water already. Wisconsin, I would say, has earned their way into second. A seat up on Boston University. Boston U has a seat or 2 on Northeastern. Now Boston challenges for that second place spot. Great race in the middle of the field here. The Huskies, I'm not even going to talk about practically. They're so far ahead. They're way out there, almost a length open now in the second 500. But here come the Terriers. The Terriers now trying to establish a firm hold on that second spot. And I'll get a rating check here. Maybe we'll get some ratings. And I'll try and do it here. Multitasking in the boat here. 38 for the Terriers, and they're beginning to get a little traction as they pull out on Wisco and Northeastern into that second spot. 3 seats up. Very smooth looking Terrier crew. And they are 38. Wisconsin, 35 and a half. Let's see what the Huskies are from Boston. 37 for the Huskies. So the Terriers now earning second spot, going through the 1,000, have a half a length over Northeastern. Washington now has sort of checked their speed, and I'd say Boston has come back on Washington to close to about a half to 2/3 of a length of open. But clearly the horsepower and racing savvy in that Washington boat has propelled them to the front. But impressively here, the Terriers, their red and white colors, are starting to pull away from Northeastern. Northeastern now pulling away a little bit from Wisconsin, and I'll give you those margins. The Terriers have stroke on bow of Northeastern, and Northeastern has a half a length on Wisconsin, and we're going to have to go a little bit wide here so we don't throw any wash for the trailing crew there, which is going to be Drexel. Coming into the last 500, about 10 strokes to go. It's a good fight between Northeastern and Boston, but Boston has coxswain on bow of Northeastern. So a strong performance, and they're closing on Washington. Maybe Washington sort of rope-a-doped them a little bit, but Boston is coming back strong on Washington and has overlapped now. So Washington gave up, or Boston came back a full length on Washington. We'll turn it over to the tower.
Thank you very much, Fred. We join you with less than 500 meters to go in the second varsity men's 8. Washington, as you say, just such strong strokes, a lot of length. We can see it here on the screen. That rhythm's really working for them. They're rowing a little bit longer, as we'd expect, than the rest of the field. Boston University, excuse me, just attacking at 38 strokes per minute, Fred. I think you had them and Northeastern about a beat lower. So keeping an eye on Northeastern and Boston as they come through to the shore. The real race, of course, at the moment happening for that critical second place position. Then it's Wisconsin and Drexel. Washington now coming through in these final few strokes. Just such power again as they come through just in front of the beach. You can see that length. But a job well done to the Boston Terriers. Of course, Northeastern and Boston, no strangers to each other back home on the Charles River. Boston keeping themselves right with Washington, although Washington, again, getting a little bit longer, knowing that they've captured that first place position as they come through the line. It is second to Boston University, so Washington and Boston will advance directly to the semis, where Northeastern and Wisconsin, along with Drexel now in their final few, relegated to the repechage this afternoon. So a solid race and just a nice cadence and base from Washington. It's earned them that first place position in Heat 1.
Yeah, Washington, just their mission this morning, make it into that semifinal, a mission accomplished. So the Huskies, you saw them do, their race plan was to just take that incredibly aggressive start. They had that open water lead pretty darn quick, and then Northeastern and Boston University fighting for that second place position. BU really doing an excellent job to make sure that they advanced into that semifinal. So Northeastern, Wisconsin, and Drexel this afternoon, they're going to be in the reps with one crew advancing into the semifinals. So good racing from the Washington Huskies and Boston University there. We got next heat coming up. We have heat number 2, the undefeated Harvard 2V in lane number 1, Dartmouth in 2 next to them, Syracuse in 3, Columbia in 4, Oregon State Beavers in 5, and Santa Clara out there in lane number 6. So a 6-boat race, 2 crews advancing into that semifinal, everyone else to the reps, but we've got a good series of races here. We got 4 heats of the men's second varsity. After that, we'll be moving on to more heavyweight racing with the men's third varsity 8s following the second varsity. So 4 heats of the 2V, 1 heat of them done. Second heat coming up next at the 9:30 start. Harvard, your number 2 seed in this 2V race. Coming up, we'll see what Harvard can do. Can they replicate what the varsity 8 for Harvard did earlier and just do a runaway lead, just like we saw Washington in that first heat of the 2V. So we'll be back up to the start in just a second.
And awaiting the start of the 9:30 a.m. race. If you're on the beach, you can see the Yale shell rowing by just in front. That should be their varsity lightweight 8 Yale. And a quick read of times if you're curious, speaking of the lightweights, to hear a little bit more about the men's varsity lightweight 8s. That was heat 1 and 2, of course, that we saw. I'll go through pretty quickly as we wait the start. Which was the fastest heat? Well, it was heat number 1 with Princeton, Columbia, and Pennsylvania. On paper, those are our top 3 times. Then it would be Cornell, the winner of heat number 2, with the 4th fastest time overall. Then quickly scanning with my eyes here, I think then it's over to Yale. But do want to note that heat number 1, Princeton, Columbia, and Pennsylvania posted the fastest times overall, followed by Cornell. So shaking up, as we mentioned here earlier, to be an excellent grand final. But moving back into the heavyweight category, we have a race upon us. It's the 9:30 a.m. race, the men's second varsity 8, heat 2, with Harvard, Dartmouth, Syracuse, Columbia, Oregon State, and Santa Clara now under starters orders. Not quite sitting up at the catch, but we should have a race underway in the next minute.
All right, so these Harvard guys coming off that win at the Eastern Sprints. Harvard was that first place crew at Sprints, followed by Brown, about just under 3 seconds ahead of Brown. So a great race from the Crimson at Worcester. And we've got Princeton in the third place bronze medal position from Eastern Sprints. And out west in the Pac-12 championships, it was Washington about 3.5 seconds ahead of California in the second varsity race. So Washington did a nice job in that first heat of the morning. Heat number 2, we got seed number 2, Harvard there in lane number 1. So looking left to right on your screen, top to bottom there, it's Harvard, then Dartmouth, Syracuse, Columbia, Oregon State, and Santa Clara down here in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. So no crews sitting with their blades in the water yet, so I think we got another minute or so till we got to start for heat number 2. But we've got the guys from Harvard doing a very nice job throughout the season, coming away with a lot of wins, no blemishes on their record. So Harvard, we're expecting to see a great race from these guys in lane number 1. So sitting easy still at the start line. You can check out the race course. You can see just this race course here in Lake Natoma running from east to west towards downtown Sacramento. The California foothills off to the east, the Sierra Nevadas and Lake Tahoe beyond that. But beautiful, beautiful conditions here. Really can't ask for anything better as a rower than to get a full 7-lane race course, all buoyed, all marked, very clear, great starting platform here at the Sac State Aquatic Center. All blades are buried, a little bit of a tap around there from the Oregon State crew, just touching it. And we have a start. Heat number 2, men's second varsity 8, Harvard there in lane number 1. Followed by Dartmouth, Syracuse, Columbia, and Oregon State. Dartmouth was your 5th place crew at the Eastern Sprints. Harvard was your winner of Eastern Sprints. Got some good competition going on. Dartmouth looking like they want to challenge Harvard early in the race here. Harvard, Dartmouth staying right out in front, and it looks like we've got Syracuse running right with them. We got 3 boats in the lead, 3 boats just slightly off. Oregon State looking like they've got just a few inches moving out on Columbia there. So lane number 5, the Beavers moving just a little bit of a lead over Columbia. And we got Santa Clara in lane number 6 with the red blades. So Harvard there on the left side of your screen with Dartmouth right next to them. Syracuse just to the right side of Dartmouth. Columbia and Oregon State in a tight battle for that 4th place position. But Harvard with looking like they're getting good traction off the start and getting that lead, but maybe just a deck length or so. Fred, how's that margin looking right now?
All right, thanks, Steve. Harvard definitely starting to take a press here over Dartmouth, but I like that aggressiveness of Dartmouth out of the blocks. They're trying to get a little bit of a third of a length or so over Syracuse. Dartmouth had a disappointing, I'd say, sprints in the JV. They really had an opportunity there, but they're out to prove that they can run with the big, faster crews here today. So Dartmouth hanging right with Harvard rather. Syracuse running in 3rd, and as you said, Oregon State ahead of Columbia here by about 3 seats, and then back to Santa Clara. Harvard settled down now. Their rate has come down. 36.5. Let's see what Dartmouth's at. Dartmouth around 36.5 as well. So Harvard starting to punch it out just a little bit, taking a move here at about 750. And Dartmouth holding on and has probably taken another seat off of Syracuse. Nothing has changed between Columbia and Oregon State. Nice looking rowing here from Harvard. Nice C shape in their backs, swinging open, and Dartmouth going right with them. Dartmouth now bow on 6th seat of Harvard, and Dartmouth getting a little bit more bite on Syracuse. Dartmouth now has 6 seats on Syracuse. So third 500, time to make the legs burn a little bit. Harvard looks very controlled, very smooth. And Dartmouth likes where they are. Good, strong, aggressive finish, kind of a trademark of the Dartmouth guys. Really accelerating into the bow, front half bite, but then aggressive to the body and through into the bow. They're making that work for them as they have almost a length on Syracuse now. But back in the pack here, Columbia has now taken over fourth from Oregon State. Columbia took a big push and has a half a length up on Oregon State. Approaching the last 500, it's Harvard with about 7 seats over Dartmouth. Dartmouth with a full length over Syracuse. Syracuse with a length open water splash over Columbia. Columbia 2/3 of a length over Oregon State, and Santa Clara trailing. We'll get ready to turn it to the tower. With that order, Harvard, Dartmouth, Syracuse, Columbia, and Oregon State, Santa Clara. Over to you, Colleen.
Thank you very much, Fred. As they come through, a little bit more of a spread out heat, I'd say, in terms of margins than maybe some of the heats that we've seen this morning. It's Harvard leading, Fred, as you rightly say, coached by Charlie, but he's in the midst of his 6th season at the helm of the Harvard men's heavyweight crew team and 34th overall season with the Harvard rowing program, previously serving as the Friends of Harvard lightweight rowing coach and the men's lightweight crew for 28 years. So just a wealth of experience, of course, on the Harvard coaching side, which we expect out of that program. It's working for them as they move through heat number 2, a strong start, a strong middle 1,000, and now moving into the last 250. It's looking like Harvard and Dartmouth, Steve.
Yeah, just staying comfortable, staying long. Really, the coxswains are just right now talking about just keeping it controlled, keeping your rhythm, keeping your flow of your crew kind of going here, because nobody's really challenging too much right now. Syracuse is trying to put a little push into that Dartmouth lead, but going to be a little bit too late for on the race course. But Harvard looking pretty good here. Lane number 1, Harvard going to be your winner of heat number 2 of this 2V. So the Eastern Sprints champs and Dartmouth moving on with Syracuse, Columbia, Oregon State, and Santa Clara moving into the reps. So Harvard and Dartmouth doing a nice job there, joining Washington and BU into the semifinals. So good racing from the Eastern Sprints champs, and a pretty solid race there. A good performance by Dartmouth. The Big Green just rowing a nice solid race all the way down the race course, staying comfortably in front of Syracuse the whole time. You saw Columbia and Oregon State kind of jockeying and trading that lead for the 4th place position, going a lot of the way down the race course in a good solid race between those two for that 4th place position. So we've got Harvard and Dartmouth moving on, and we'll head back up. We got the race up next. It's heat number 3 of the men's second varsity. California, the boys from Yale, Navy, Pennsylvania, Hobart, and out in lane 6, FIT. All right, so back up to All right, so if that's your motorhome, you better head over and get it moved right now. So we're looking up at the race course. We got heat number 3 coming up. You can see on the screen right now, lane number 2, 3, and 4 in the picture. On the right side of your screen as you're looking at it, we got Yale, Navy, and Pennsylvania there in the 3, 2, 3, and 4 lanes. Out of our picture right now is California, and on the other side, Hobart and FIT. So Hobart earning their way back into the IRA this year. Good performance at the NIRC championships. California coming off of Pac-12s, where they finished second behind Washington. And Yale was in 4th place at the Eastern Sprints in the second varsity race. So the very deep, talented crew, the whole squad from Yale. I'm expecting a good race from this Yale boat, challenging California. So Yale came away with a win at the Crew Classic over California in the second varsity race. And you can see right now, California and Yale out there with the Naval Academy, looking like those three got a little bit of a jump on the field, with Hobart doing a nice job out there in lane 5 as well. So we've got the overhead shot, California aggressiveness, kind of making a statement from the Cow Bears in lane number 1. So California taking a couple seats early on over Yale, and it's looking like Navy might be in second place with Yale right with them. So Navy and Yale in that 2-3 position. California early on is your leader. California, Yale looking like they might have been inching away from the Naval Academy, with Hobart there, lane number 5, in a solid 4th position over Penn and FIT. So California with a good aggressive start. Again, like we saw with their varsity, a little bit of lineup shakeup, some guys moving around between those top 2 boats. But when you have a deep, talented team like California or Yale, you got that option to kind of move your pieces around, try to make the best crews you can. Varsity 8 priority. You got that second Varsity 8, which can really make some speed with some good changes. So California with that lead on Yale. It looks like California's coxswain all the way up to the bow ball of Yale in lane number 2. Yale with a lead on the Naval Academy. So right now we've got California in the lead early on. But Fred, let's go out to you. And California's got the lead.
Yes, indeed. The Golden Bears have almost a length now up on. Churning away nicely, though, has a full length up on Navy. But Navy's being challenged over here in lane 5 by Hobart, I believe it is. Hobart, Pennsylvania running in 5th, but just a couple seats up on FIT. So it's really starting to spread out in the second 500 here. The Bears lift up Yale. A lot of horsepower in that outfit. Yale also open water up on Navy. And Hobart here making a nice run, challenging the Naval Academy. Still about 8 seats back, 7 seats back, but in the mix there. Let me get some ratings as they go through the 1,000. California, 36. Let's see what Yale's got going here. Yale, 35. Long and strong. The crews are really spreading out now, as you can see. With California really rowing away from Yale, half a length open. And then it's a half a length open between Yale and Naval Academy, and Hobart just on the stern of Navy. Then it's a splash of open back to Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania holding off FIT. So quite a spread between these 6 crews. As California continues to lead Yale by a good 3/4 of a length of open water. Then it's a full length of open water back to Navy. So those 2 crews really got a little bit more hull base speed than Navy and the rest of the pack here. Coming into the last 500, it's going to be California comfortably in front. Yale doing the work in second place. Then back a full length of open to Navy. Navy will cross into the last 500 now. Hobart, a splash behind. And I'll get ready to toss it over you to Colleen at the finish line 10. Over to you.
All right, so California out there in the lead. It looks like, checking this lineup for California, a lot of big, strong Golden Bears in this California second varsity. Looks like Coach Franson's got some guys back that have been recovering from injuries this year. Will Creed in there in the 6th seat. Powerful, strong young man from Colorado doing a great job in this California 2V. So California taking a page from those Varsity 8s heats, just running away with an excellent start, strong middle 1,000, and now cruising in this last 500. So the Golden Bears along the shore here at Lake Natoma. California on the lead comfortably, looking very strong. Nice tight catches, a lot of good experience in this California second Varsity 8. The very talented crew in this Cal boat. So California with a big open water lead over Yale. Yale in a solid second qualifying position to move to that grand final. California just running away with this one. The Cal Golden Bears crossing the line first very comfortably. Maybe one of the biggest margins we've seen so far this morning. So California in first, Yale in that solid second position, well ahead of the Naval Academy. Hobart doing a nice job there. Doing a little bit better spacing out. Hobart rowing well through this final 500 meters. There's the Naval Academy crossing the line. Hobart coming in that 4th place position ahead of Pennsylvania. And then in the 6th place position, FIT, Florida Tech, coming in 6th. So California doing a nice job moving into that semifinal. So California and Yale directly into that semifinal where they will join Washington and Boston University, Harvard and Dartmouth. We have one more heat of the men's second varsity, and we got Brown and Princeton, Cornell and George Washington, Stanford and UC San Diego coming up in that next race. So California, big, powerful strokes off the start line, really just running away off that start, getting into the body of the piece. That you could just see the acceleration and power coming from that very experienced California crew. So some seniors in that boat doing a very nice job pressing and really swinging along together. So the second varsity for Cal doing a nice job there in their heat. They'll be looking to challenge Washington and Harvard, Dartmouth and BU in those semifinals. So we'll head back up to the start. Last heat of the men's second varsity 8s coming up next.
It's okay. I can go back on if you want. And awaiting the start now of the 9:50 a.m. race. In the meantime, I can tell you about times from heat number 2. So not the race that we saw just go by, but the one before. As we know, it was Dartmouth with a 5:47.3. Harvard with a 5:47.3. Second, Dartmouth 5:49.7. Then Syracuse in third, 5:52.1. Columbia fourth, 5:57.3. Oregon State in fifth, 5:58.1. And Santa Clara in 6th with a 6:14.1, which means Harvard and Dartmouth will advance directly to the semis, with the remaining crews relegated to the repechage. But great racing, of course, that we've seen from the men's second varsity 8 as we await the final heat. So Cal in our last heat with just such a strong performance, Yale, Navy, and a job well done to Hobart too. Ethan Curran notably joined the coaching staff in August 2018, bringing great insight to the program, I'm sure. He joined as the assistant coach, and of course many folks will know him from the junior rowing world and from Community Rowing Incorporated, CRI, out in Boston. So he brings just a wealth of coaching experience to that program, and I think we really just saw that in that last heat. For now, though, Steve, we have a race underway, or we should, in less than a minute.
Yep, we got next heat coming up. Brown, Princeton, Cornell, George Washington, Stanford, and UC San Diego. You know this Princeton crew is going to be eager to go head-to-head with Brown again. They've had their dual race between the two. They saw each other certainly in the fall, and then they raced at the Eastern Sprints. Princeton just behind Brown. Brown with that silver medal position at the Eastern Sprints. Brown was second behind Harvard at sprints, with Princeton coming in that bronze position. And it was a pretty tight race between Brown and Princeton there at sprints. It was just over a second between Bruno and the Tigers. But we've got to start, and it looks like, again, things are going to be tight between the 4 and 5 seed, Brown and Princeton, here in the second varsity. So Brown and Princeton kind of trying to get that early lead on Cornell, George Washington, Stanford, and UC San Diego. So Princeton, I'm thinking that if you look across there, it's Princeton with a couple seat, well, maybe not a seat, but you could call it a half a deck length over Brown. Cornell just off of Brown. George Washington, Stanford, and UC San Diego doing a nice job to stick right there with the Cardinal. So UC San Diego in lane 6, running bow ball to bow ball with Stanford in that 5th position. But your leader is Princeton. Princeton with the clear lead over Brown. Brown looking to get challenging give a challenge to the Princeton Tigers here as we reach for the 500-meter mark. And Fred, let's go out to you. We've got Princeton in the lead early on. It's Princeton.
Indeed, the Tigers have a seat or so on Brown.
I can take the throw when Fred.
And then it's almost a full length back to Cornell.
Good start for Princeton.
But the Tigers have 2 seats on Bruno as they cross the 500-meter mark.
Bucket.
Have a deep squad. They're rowing 36 strokes a minute. And then it's all the way over here to lane 6. UCSD probably challenging Cornell there for that 3rd spot. And George Washington in 5. And Stanford in 6th. So Princeton and Brown having a great fight out front. They have open water on Cornell, but what a great duel between the Tigers and the Bears. And the Bruno is coming back to challenge Princeton. Get a rating check for us here. Trying to hold my mic. The wind blowing it here. But Bruno now is taking the lead, and they have a seat over the Tigers. Rating check 39, if that's correct. Bruno might have taken a push. 38. Don't want to give Paul Cook a heart attack down in the stands there. But Brown has really punched it now. They're taking a Big 10, and they have 3 seats on the Tigers. And it's back, open water to Cornell, and it's tightening up with the 3 outside lanes. UCSD, Stanford, and George Washington all within 3 seats of one another. Cornell clearly in 3rd. So Princeton had the better start, but Brown has come back to claim the lead here in the middle 1,000. We'll see if the Tigers have a gear to go here. How high they are. Princeton's at 39, so both of them pretty high stroking today. Really going after it here in the middle of the 3rd 500. 37 now for Bruno, so they just took a press there, a big 10-15, and got ahead of the Tigers, and now they've lengthened out again. And the Tigers are also turning over pretty fast here, 38. So Cornell, a full length of open back of the Tigers. Stanford has come up to challenge GW here. And they're only a half a length back. And then in UCSD is in 6. So getting ready to toss it to the tower. Finish line tent. Brown is ahead by about a half a length over Princeton. Over to you, Steve and Colleen.
Thank you very much, Fred. I've been waiting for this race in the second Varsity 8 with Brown and Princeton lining up against each other. So these crews, of course, no strangers to each other. In the preseason, Brown and Princeton raced, and Princeton had quite a successful day, winning the Varsity 8, 3V, and 4V, but not the 2V. Then at the Eastern Sprints, it was second for Brown and third for Princeton. So just so much rivalry, and also having raced each other a few times in the preseason, they of course have the opportunity to understand each other's race strategy, to gain speed, and of course between Eastern Sprints in the IRA, such a critical time to gain every little bit of speed that you possibly can. But Steve, as they come down, it's looking good for Brown and Princeton.
Yeah, Brown didn't get flustered when Princeton got that lead early, and so Brown just pressed. You saw them make their definitive moves. They really just took that lead. Now they've got good control of the race. Brown and Princeton comfortably in those two qualifying positions here. So Brown just running along the shore here. Brown looking very good. Nice sharp rhythm coming from the Brown crew. Princeton really trying to crank that rating a little bit earlier in the race to try to press Brown, but Brown with the lead, about a 6-seat, 7-seat lead over Princeton. Brown and Princeton, you're two clear into the semis. And now we've got Cornell with Stanford running up. Stanford pressing over that George Washington 8. So Stanford just taking that fourth position ahead of GW in the triple bucket, a rare sighting here at the IRA. And following up, we've got the finish from UC San Diego coming in that sixth position. So UC San Diego, George Washington, Stanford, and Cornell, they move on to the repechage in the afternoon with a chance to make the semifinals if they win a rep. But it's Princeton and Brown with a tight battle for that first place position throughout the whole race course, and those two move on to your semifinals. So Princeton and Brown joining Yale and Cal, Dartmouth, Harvard, Washington, and Boston University. So those are the ones from the second varsity that move on into those semifinals. We got the afternoon repechage with one winner of each rep, which will move on to the semifinals to join those 8 crews from this morning. The semifinals tomorrow, always exciting to see who's going to make it into those grand finals for that chance to fight for the national championship in their event. So good race from Brown. Excellent work through the middle 1,000. You just saw them stick to their race plan and then grind through Princeton, and then just move away gradually in that final 500 meters. Just nice, comfortable rowing from Brown. Very fluid, very dynamic movement from the Brown crew. So coming up next, we've got the men's third varsity 8s races. Pretty good lineup of races coming up. We've got, in the last few years, we've transitioned from the freshman 8s race over to this third varsity 8 event. So you can have any class in this race. The Stewards Cup used to be awarded only to the freshman 8. Now it's awarded to the third varsity 8. Washington's coming in as your number 1 seed. Yale, the Eastern Sprints winner, is the 2 seed. Princeton is number 3, and number 4 seed for them is California. So we've got those crews coming up next in the men's third varsity 8. Heat number 1, we'll see Washington in lane number 1 along the beach. Dartmouth in lane number 2. Northeastern in 3, Stanford in 4, and Hobart in 5. So we've got a 5-boat race here in heat number 1 of the men's third varsity 8. Only 19 crews in the 3V men's third varsity 8 race, but we've got 19 crews in there with the same thing today. We got 2 boats moving on from the heats into the semifinals in this third varsity 8 race, just like we had in the other semifinals for the varsities, or the varsity and the second varsity. So Washington, Dartmouth, Northeastern, Stanford, and Hobart coming up here in heat number 1 of the men's third varsity. Heat number 2 will be up next. We've got Yale as the top seed in that race. Heat number 3 has got Princeton, and heat number 4 has California with the 5 seed Harvard right beside them. So should see some good racing. After this event, after the third varsity events, we move into the varsity 4s, the men's open or heavyweight varsity 4s. You get to see some good racing. It's an unseeded event, so unlike a lot of these other events, unlike every other event this morning, it's not seeded. It's just a random selection of the crews. So the whole field, you get a little bit more variable races that could happen in this men's varsity fours. And we follow up and finish up the morning with the men's varsity lightweight four with coxswain. We saw the straight fours for the lightweights first race of the day. We're going to finish up the morning with the coxed fours for the lightweights. So up next, we've got the start coming up of your first heat, heat number 1 of the men's third varsity. Washington in 1, Dartmouth in 2, Northeastern in 3, Stanford in 4, and Hobart in lane number 5.
So just to confirm, a little bit of a break, if you will. Our next race is at 10:10 a.m. So we've got a good 9 minutes or so before the start of the men's third Varsity 8 Heat 1. A lot of depth in this field as well, so 4 heats for the men's third Varsity 8. Heat 1 goes off at 10:10 a.m. with Washington, Dartmouth, Northeastern, Stanford, and Hobart. So we'll join you again in a few minutes, but just to give you a quick preview of that upcoming race, the men's third Varsity 8 Heat 1. Washington comes in with the top seed of the event, and they race out of lane 1. Dartmouth, just next to them out of lane 2, comes in seeded 8th in the 3v8. Northeastern University in the center there out of lane 3. They come in with the 9th seed. Then it's Stanford out of lane 4, seeded 16th. And finally, Hobart seeded 17th in the heavyweight third Varsity 8. So Washington, the 2019 Pac-12 champion, they've gone undefeated in 2019 under the leadership of Coach Michael Callahan. So we're excited to see this race get underway. We'll join you again in 5 or 6 minutes for the 10:10 a.m. race.
All right, so folks, we're coming up on the 10:10 start of the men's third Varsity 8 heat number 1. We got the Huskies in lane number 1. Washington's Huskies coming in off their undefeated season here, coming into the Pac-12 championships. They went ahead and ran away with it from Cal, about 7 seconds in front of California there at the Pac-12 championships in the third Varsity 8. And the Huskies will be matched up in this heat against Dartmouth in lane number 2, Northeastern in 3, Stanford in 4, and Hobart in lane number 5. Dartmouth, your 8 seed in the third Varsity 8 event here. Dartmouth was the 6th place crew in the 3V Grand Final at Sprints, so doing a nice job of making it into that Grand Final for Coach Wyatt Allen's third Varsity. Good, developing good depth there at Dartmouth in the recent years. So Washington, one of the deepest teams here. We'll see Washington's Huskies in lane number 1, Dartmouth in 2, Northeastern in 3. A little bit of a younger crew from the Northeastern Huskies. Stanford in lane number 4 and Hobart in 5. So the drone view here as we pan around, you can see at the top of those 5 boats as we look at it on the monitor. We've got Washington at the top, and we have a start to the third Varsity 8, heat number 1. So heat number 1, third Varsity, Washington, Dartmouth, Northeastern, Stanford, and Hobart. But good racing coming and expected here. Washington looking like they've got that traction off the start. Big, powerful strokes from the Huskies, getting a good start. Dartmouth looking like a solid second position with Northeastern right beside them. Stanford and Hobart just trailing a little bit. But the Huskies from Seattle, Washington, really running away, getting that good start. Just like we saw the first varsity and second varsities, the third varsity guys learning something from those other 2 crews. Coach Callahan's third varsity got to be really gunning for an aggressive start, getting that margin built up early on, and then get comfortable for the middle 1,000 meters and just rowing their race. So the Huskies out in the lead. The White Blades, Washington, getting about a half a length to maybe 2/3 of a length on Dartmouth. Dartmouth clearly in front of Northeastern now. Stanford and Hobart pretty even, but trailing the 3 lead crews. So again, we got 2 boats to advance to the semifinals. So Washington and Dartmouth, Northeastern, Stanford, and Hobart. Let's go out to the water. Fred, we're over to you.
All right, thanks very much. The Huskies did blast off there as advertised. That's a pretty deep program, and those guys won the Pac-12s by a lot of open water. Dartmouth doing a nice job keeping their bow on the cocks of Washington. Washington, interesting technique, just really a lot of front end. Not much in the back end, to my eye anyway. It's really loaded up front end, push down the legs, and then get the hands around. But it's pretty vertical at the back end. Dartmouth now holding off Northeastern by about a length, and then it's all the way over to Hobart ahead of Stanford. Hobart has about a third to a half a length up on Stanford. Oh, the crew's starting to stretch out a little bit now. Washington just 1 length up on Dartmouth. The Big Green doing an admirable job against this very deep West Coast powerhouse. Now it looks like the Huskies from Northeastern, from Boston, are trying to make a push on Dartmouth. About 37.5, 38 for the Huskies from Boston. And Washington, again, starting to break away a little bit. A little open water over Dartmouth now. So long and strong in the third 500. Huskies, looks like they may be taking a press here. I would say Washington has upped their rating just a little bit. And they are making that pay off. But the Northeastern Huskies are advancing on Dartmouth. So bow on 4-man for Dartmouth. So I'd say the Huskies are definitely taking a press here in the third 500. those from Boston in the black shirts versus the white Huskies. And those three crews have left Stanford and Hobart behind. Can the black-shirted Huskies capture the green-shirted Dartmouth Indians? Can we see? Can we see it? Looks like they're closing. Just a seat or two seats separating Northeastern from Dartmouth. As we get ready to toss it to the finish line tent, the Washington Huskies clearly in command, open water, but now it's a real dogfight between Northeastern and Dartmouth. Over to you at the tent.
All right, so Washington Huskies along the beach. You can see these Huskies just eager to get this race wrapped up, but they're doing a nice job. Great start from Washington. Just clearly, these lane number ones, the high seeds, we've seen excellent starts all day long from the highest seed in each of these races. So Washington doing a great job along the shore. So you can see that the Huskies in lane number one clearly out on the lead. We've got a good fight going, though, between Northeastern and Dartmouth for that second position. So 2 boats to qualify. Northeastern's really making a challenge of it here. We got to take a quick look at them, but the Huskies out in front with their senior stroke seat, Max Rennie, doing a nice job setting up that long, strong rhythm for this Washington boat in lane number one. Lane number 3, Northeastern in the black, really pressing Dartmouth in lane number 2. 2 spots to go. It looks like Northeastern really wants to make sure that they advance to that semifinal. Washington in lane 1 clearly out with the lead to advance. And it looks like Northeastern attacked from that 750 meters on or to go. Northeastern really laying into it and taking that race and taking away that qualifying spot from Dartmouth. So a nice job by some of these younger Huskies from Northeastern to make it and qualify into the semifinal. Great race from Northeastern to make it into the semifinals ahead of Dartmouth. So Washington and Northeastern will be the 2 crews that move forward into that semifinal tomorrow for the men's 3rd Varsity 8 race. So we've got, just wrapping up here, we've got Hobart crossing the line, lane number 5. Hobart crossing the line now, ahead of the Cardinal from Stanford in lane number 4. So results were Washington in first, Northeastern with a nice job there in second place, Dartmouth in third, Hobart in fourth, and Stanford in fifth. So good racing in heat number 1 of the men's 3rd Varsity 8. Heat number 2 we've got coming up next at 10:20. Be up to the start shortly for the start of Yale, Boston University, Navy, Oregon State, and Drexel. Heat number 2 of the men's 3rd Varsity 8 will be the next one. We've got the Eastern Sprints winners, seed number 2, Yale, winning the Eastern Sprints in the 3rd Varsity 8. The depth of the Yale program really showing up this year. Yale coming away with the wins in the varsity, the 3rd varsity, the 4th varsity, and the 5th varsity, and the 6th varsity race as well at Eastern Sprints. So amazing. Yale University doing a great job building up a very deep, talented program. 6 varsity 8s racing at the Eastern Sprints here at Lake Natoma. Yale's got 3 crews entered. The varsity, 2nd varsity, and 3rd varsity. And coming up next, we'll see the Bulldogs in the 3rd varsity running up against Boston University, Navy, Oregon State, and Drexel. So we got a quick view of the start now. We got just in the picture lanes 2, 3, and 4, Boston, Navy, and Oregon State there in lanes 2, 3, and 4. Yale will be off the picture just slightly in lane number 1, and Drexel on the outside in lane number 5. So that Eastern Sprints race, Princeton came in second to Yale, just over 3 seconds off of the Yale 3V. Harvard just behind Princeton in the 3V Eastern Sprints race for the top 3 spots. And California was the second place crew behind Washington at Pac-12s. So we've got some good racing coming up in the men's 3rd varsity. As I said earlier, the 3rd varsity 8s, they're awarded the Stewards Cup. That was previously awarded to the freshman 8s winners. But over time, we've transitioned into the 3V, and we've done a nice job of development through the 3rd varsity 8s of all these crews. So we'll be up to the start of heat number 2 of the third varsity. It looks like we're up at the start. We've got the blades buried, kind of sitting ready here. Perfect conditions here. Just about as good as you could possibly ask for. You just see a tiny breath of wind, but nothing that's going to cause any problem for any of these crews out here this morning. All right, so we're just about a minute away from the start of the third Varsity 8 heat number 2. We got Yale there in lane number 1. Good experience from this Yale crew, just like we've seen across the board. A lot of good recruiting coming from all of these programs. Yale developing a really strong bottom end of their team now. And as we've heard from Coach Gladstone, it's just been about a commitment to developing a whole squad where every single athlete has their role. Every athlete on the squad, they know what their job is. And that's been part of the key to developing a squad where you can carry 6/8 deep, has been just that commitment to making sure that everyone has their role, everybody has an enjoyable time in the training process, as hard as the grind can be throughout the winters. Still, it just makes such a difference to have such a deep squad where there's competition for seats all the way from 6V all the way up to that 1V.
I think that depth we saw at the Eastern Sprints as well. Yale just with an absolute dominant performance at the Eastern Sprints just a few weeks ago, truly in so many of the boat categories. So I personally am very excited to see what the IRA looks like for them, but certainly think that depth is something that we'll see. Not just a strong performance from the Varsity 8, though of course I think we can expect that too, but truly through all of these boat categories. And not least of which the third Varsity 8, which should be underway any moment. We're just past that 10:20 mark, and of course, as I say that, we have a start. It's the men's third Varsity 8. It's heat number 2, Yale, Boston, Navy, Oregon State, and Drexel, with 2 to advance directly to the semifinals and the remaining crews relegated to the afternoon repechage. It's a good start for Yale, no surprise there, but a fast start for Navy too, Steve.
Yeah, Navy, Coach Rob Friedrich's guys doing a nice job. Navy's got a good team with a lot of depth, just like Yale. They run all the way down past 6/8 of guys deep, so the Navy heavyweights, just like Yale, a big squad. A squad really committed to developing depth and talent throughout the whole group. But Yale doing exactly as we saw with their 1V and their 2V and just taking off that start. Navy with an impressive start from the midshipmen to take about a 2-seat lead over Boston University. We'll see if BU can kind of get a little bit more traction, move back in. But I think we're going to have quite a race here for this next qualifying spot, just like we saw in that first race with Dartmouth and Northeastern battling back and forth. I think we're going to see that the Naval Academy and BU really fight for that next qualifying spot. But we've got Yale out there on the lead. Nice job by this Yale third varsity. You can see kind of that easy, just pressing style of the Yale men. Just really smooth, good control. But I'm telling you, this Naval Academy crew, this Naval third varsity, they're looking like they want to make a little bit of a race of it. They're kind of trying to stick with Yale now as they go. So, Fred, let's head on out to you in the launch.
Okay, it's Yale, as you said, leading by almost a full length over the Naval Academy. And can Boston measure up? It looks like BU's now taking a press. So I would say that they're dead level with Navy and running about 36.5, 37. And I give BU a slight advantage now, 1 seat up over Navy. And then it's back over to Oregon State. I'm sorry, check that. Make that Drexel on top of Oregon State by about 3/4 of a length over here on the far side. Boston now, press. There's a couple of seats up on Navy and is close closing back up Yale. Here we go into the second 1,000 now. It's Yale looking comfortable. And a great race in the middle between Boston and Navy. Boston University starting to get a little bit more confidence, a little bit longer, is beginning to inch away from the midshipmen with 3 or 4 seats lead now. Call it 3 seats. And Boston coming back a little bit on Yale. Bow on Coxon now, whereas before they had a splash of open. The hard work of the third 500. There it is. Drexel still holding off Oregon State by about a half a length. No real change in margin there. So your top 3 crews, Yale, Boston, and Navy, are coming back on Yale. No question about it. Boston's bow now on the 7th seat of Yale. So Yale blasted off, probably just protecting that lead now. But give it credit to the Terriers as they begin to ramp it up here for the last 650 meters. We'll get ready to toss it to the tent with Boston clearly having surpassed Navy in the middle 1,000. Over to our commentators at the tent.
Well, Boston did a great job not to get flustered at all by that lead that the Naval Academy had off the start. So BU did a nice job making their move through Navy, and then now they're kind of just working on inching in and approaching that Yale crew, not letting Yale run away with this one. So the younger guys from Boston University doing a great job. They traveled with the full squad out to the Windermere Cup in Seattle, did a nice job of racing there under what can be challenging conditions for the opposing team. But the BU crew probably take that West Coast trip, a little bit of an advantage to kind of get used to that travel and then return out west to California, and doing a nice job here today in heat number 2 of the third Varsity 8. So Yale with a clear lead, Boston University in that second qualifying position. Navy's just trailing a little bit back of BU, open water behind them, with Drexel over Oregon State there in the 4th and 5th position. So it looks like a good race from Yale. They did kind of what we saw with their other crews, just got a good strong start, good quick start from the Yale Bulldogs. You can see Coach Gladstone's guys have kind of had the same MO all day long. Get that aggressive start, settle in, watch the other crews, but control your race the whole way down. Move on and have done your job for the day, which is to qualify for that semifinal. So Yale placing their 3rd boat into the semifinals today. Boston University with a nice job there to get that 2nd qualifying position. So BU and Yale moving ahead to the semifinals. The Naval Academy, Drexel, and Oregon State pressing Drexel a little at the end here, but it's Drexel for 4th, Oregon State for 5th. So good racing coming from Yale and Boston University to move into that 3V semifinals. So Washington and Northeastern from heat number 1, Yale and BU from 2. We'll be up next, going back up to the start to see heat number 3 with Princeton, Syracuse, Brown, George Washington, and UC San Diego. Should be some good racing up there for heat number 3 with 2 crews to advance to the semifinals.
And I'll tell you a little bit about times from heat, the men's 3rd Varsity 8. This is heat number 1, so we saw that race just before the one that passed. And we can see the Northeastern guys wet docking here on shore. So it was Washington to capture first with a time of 5:47.3. Then Northeastern in second with a 5:50.9 to qualify directly for that semifinal, which means it's Dartmouth with a 5:54.2, Hobart with a 6:12.3, and Stanford with a 6:17.8, relegated to the repechage this afternoon.
All right, so looking up at the bluff there behind the start line. If you haven't been up near the start, you can take the bike path, walk all the way up there. You get a great shot, a great view looking down on the start line. If you haven't been up along the trail that runs here from the Aquatic Center out towards Folsom, it's a beautiful spot to go take a look up at the start line, see a different angle from the racing that you see at the finish line here. But we've got coming up heat number 3, Princeton, Syracuse, Brown, George Washington, UC San Diego. So Princeton checking in as your second place silver medal finisher at Eastern Sprints in this third Varsity 8. Syracuse was the fourth place finisher at Eastern Sprints. Just, they were a little open water behind Harvard, just out of the medals there. And we've got in lane number 3, Brown, lane number 4, George Washington, and lane number 5, UC San Diego. So expecting a good race here. We got Princeton coming in as the 3 seed. Syracuse checking in as the 6 seed. Up next after this will be into the 4th heat of the third Varsity 8 with California in lane number 1 of that race. So a couple of qualifiers moving through. 4 qualifiers moving through to the semifinals. From the first 2, we've got 4 more to separate out here in these heats of the third Varsity 8. So like I said, third Varsity 8 has kind of replaced the freshman event at the IRA. We've got a good start now, clean start. First 100 meters, looks like we're going to be clear of it in just a few strokes. And as we've seen, the high seeds have been having the best starts all morning. It looks like we're going to see a little bit more of the same here, with Princeton, Syracuse, and Brown to the lead early on. George Washington, UC San Diego, just trailing those lead crews as we get through about 200 meters into the race. But Princeton, nice job there by the younger Tigers, getting a little bit of separation out, about a deck length lead from Princeton over Syracuse and Brown. So Coach Greg Hughes, assistant Matt Smith, got to be pretty happy with this third varsity, getting a good start, good traction, good pressure coming from the Princeton Tigers. And it's nice job by Brown there, jumping out, taking a half a deck or so on the lane number 2 Syracuse Orange. So we've got good racing. There's a shot of Brown, aggressiveness from Brown, good length, sitting up tall with that good leg drive. Nice swing coming from the middle of the boat in Brown's crew. Just getting that lead over Syracuse early on. But as we've seen now, we've had a little bit of change in those qualifying positions through the race. We've had a little bit of separation coming from the crews. But we got Princeton on the lead right now. Brown trying to press back into them with Syracuse in that third spot. Syracuse, we got to see what they can do. Can they kind of turn it on now and take one of those qualifying positions from Princeton or Brown? So Fred, let's go head out on the water.
Okay, it's Bruno coming back on the Tigers. Bruno working really hard there. They've gotten past Syracuse, and they are challenging the Tigers in this second 500. Run around 37. Bruno digging away. The Tigers not wanting to give that lead up. Still have about a third of a length, maybe not even that. Quarter of a length. And then it goes over to GW, about a little open water behind Syracuse, and then San Diego. So the Tigers had the best start, but Brown is working very effectively, coming back, challenging the Tigers. And Syracuse is a length back of them. Coming up to the 1,000-meter mark, let's see who takes a press. Brown has been taking a press, in my opinion, the whole second 500. But they're tough competitors there in Providence. And I would say, no, Princeton doesn't want to let them have it. It's very close for that first place position. I'd give the Tigers still the edge. But they're both pulling away from Syracuse and the rest of the field. Good fight between Bruno and the Tigers. Still a seat or two advantage for the Tigers. Now Princeton taking a press. Princeton has 2 seats up, 3 seats up, maybe Brown. No, not much more than 2 seats. As both of those teams leave Syracuse in their wake on a good quarter length open behind. GW still up on US San Diego. Boy, try as they might, Brown just cannot crack the Tigers here. It'll come down to the last 500. See if they want to put it all on the line for the bragging rights to get this first place spot. Bruno just working so hard as they're just about to go through 500 meters to go. So I'll get ready to turn it over to the tent. And here you go with a very good race between Brown and Princeton.
Thank you, Fred. Such a race indeed, as you aptly described, between Brown and Princeton. I think that's really a subplot that's happening here at the IRA. We saw it in the 2V. We're seeing it again in the 3V. As I mentioned earlier, of course, Brown and Princeton saw each other in the preseason as well as Eastern sprints. But in the preseason, Princeton had a notably great race day against Brown, capturing the Varsity 8, the third Varsity 8, and the fourth Varsity 8, with the exception of the 2V. It was Brown over Princeton. So they had a phenomenal race then. They saw each other again at Eastern sprints, and we're now just seeing that rivalry play out here in this heat. So keeping an eye on Princeton and Brown as they come by the shore.
Yeah, Princeton not being let off the hook by this Brown crew. The guys from Brown are just challenging, doing a great job. Not just being satisfied with that second place qualifying position. Brown is eager for the win, which is something you see quite often from the Brown crews. Paul Cook's guys always really trying to go for that win. It's an attitude that you see from the Brown program. It's also an attitude you see from Princeton. Princeton wants this win. It's going to be a critical one for them. The third Varsity 8 of Princeton in the lead. Clearly ahead of Brown now, but a good press from Brown all the way down the race course. So nice job by the men from Princeton.
Great race.
With about a third of a length lead over Brown there. But good racing from Brown and Princeton, clearly ahead in those 2 qualifying slots. Syracuse out here kind of all alone in the third place position. George Washington and UC San Diego coming in 4th and 5th. Crossing the line here in just a second, we'll have George Washington University, the young men from GW, crossing the line now. Open water ahead of the guys from UC San Diego coming in and crossing the line. So UC San Diego finishing up in the 5th place position, but your winner and the other qualifier from this third heat, Princeton and Brown. So Princeton and Brown moving on in heat number 3 of the men's third Varsity 8. We got one more heat of third Varsity 8 action coming up, the 1040 race, heat number 4. The California Golden Bears, Harvard Crimson, Wisconsin Badgers, and the Big Red from Cornell. So just 4 boats in this final heat of the men's third Varsity 8s. We'll be following that up at 10:50. We start our slate of men's Varsity 4s after this final race of the 8s for this morning, Friday morning at the IRA. So good races all morning long here. We've had some great races, some very aggressive starts from many of these heavyweight top-seeded crews. We saw really good racing from all the way down the slate of races. Excellent races in those lightweight 8s. The top contenders in the lightweight 8s really showing their stuff. And we've moved on to down to the third Varsity 8s here of the heavyweights coming up. We've got this 4-boat final heat of the men's third Varsity 8s, California, Harvard, Wisconsin, and Cornell. So get down and watch this one. California coming in here as your 4th seed. They were second to Washington at the Pac-12 championships. And you've got Harvard, who was the bronze at the Eastern sprints, just behind Princeton, who you saw as the winner of that third heat. So we're up in the air. We got the drone looking straight down the starting platform here at lovely Lake Natoma in Rancho Cordova, California. So 4-boat race, 2 boats to move on. 2 boats will move to the reps. We've got this afternoon to sort out those final positions for the semifinals. So with the replacement of the third varsity 8 taking over for that position of the freshman 8, you end up with a lot more kind of variability. You see a lot of younger freshmen, a lot of guys that are kind of working their way up the team in these third varsity 8s, guys that will eventually be as upperclassmen in the varsity 8s. But right now you see this third varsity 8's often a development boat. Younger guys, sometimes you get some great senior leadership with seniors who have not made the second varsity, who are in there with the third varsity, but their experience can certainly teach the athletes that are there in their lineups with a lot. And so you end up with that learning experience in the 3v8s.
And a quick update on times, if you're curious. From heat number 3, it was Princeton, as we saw, with a 5:48.6 over Brown in second, 5:50.2. Those two crews to advance directly to the semifinal. Syracuse in third, 5:59.8. So as we noted, quite a battle between Princeton and Brown. It drove them nearly 9+ seconds up ahead of Syracuse and the rest of the field. George Washington in fourth, 6:16.1. And University of California, San Diego, 6:24.2. And if you're curious as to, of these 3 heats, who has posted the fastest time thus far, well, you could, of course, turn to Twitter, but I will tell you it's Washington with a 5:47.3. Next, Princeton out of heat 3 with a 5:48.6.
All right, we got the start for heat number 4, men's third, varsity 8. California, your highest seed here in heat number 4, the 4 seed overall in the third varsity 8. Harvard right next to them. So California Golden Bears with getting a couple seats lead over Harvard, Wisconsin, and Cornell in the first few hundred meters of the race. So California, deep, strong program, as we spoke about, with Yale, with Washington, with Harvard. Big, strong, traditional powerhouse teams. And California, this third varsity 8's got some good experience in it. A lot of strong, talented athletes. Coach Scott Franson's brought in a good new staff to the University of California, Berkeley. He's brought in Brandon Schald and Sam Baum. Sam was part of the Yale staff the last few seasons, certainly taking some of that Yale experience and working with the guys from Berkeley to make this third varsity 8 a contender for medals for sure. And this third varsity 8 doing a nice job right now, getting almost up to a half a length, maybe just 2-3 seats over the crew next to them from Harvard. Harvard really wanting to try to get in there and challenge Cal for that lead. Wisconsin, the Badgers, are just behind.
I would pick it up in the second 500 here with California. About 3.5 seats up on Harvard. Harvard about 7 seats up on Wisco. Wisco about a full length up on Cornell. But Harvard giving Cal all they can take here, trying to run right with them. Harvard has their bow on the 2 seat of the Cal 8. Then it's back to Wisco with their bow on the coxswain of the Harvard crew. Doing the good, strong work here in the second 500, approaching 1,000 now. Very impressive row here from Harvard and Wisconsin. Clinging right to the Cal varsity, not letting Cal get away. I bet you Cal's going to take a move, though, here. Coming up to the 1,000. We got another seat on Harvard right about the last 15 strokes. And let's see who takes a move right now and if Harvard's going to take a move. Harvard really keeping the weight behind the handle, which is what you want to do. Keep it low, keeping the shoulders down, and keeping the weight between the handle and the shoes. Lighten up that seat as you drive the stroke through the pin. Harvard's coming back now. 1 seat back on Cal. Really good race between those two. And they've left Wisconsin a length behind them. Harvard working the outside arms, the inside legs, pressing on Cal. Can they catch Cal? Good smooth conditions here. Really spectacular venue, great place to have the Nationals. And Harvard's moving on Cal. Harvard just a half a deck down now. Coming up to 500 to go. This is a toss-up. Bow ball to bow ball, Harvard and Cal. Can the Crimson take the lead? Here they are. The Crimson now has inched ahead of California, and we'll give it over to Stephen Colleen. Over to you.
All right, so yeah, what a race. This is one of the best heavyweight races of the day. You can see this California crew really trying to respond to that Harvard push, but Harvard doing an excellent job. Really what you want to see as the coach is just staying with your race plan, and that's what Harvard did. They didn't let California just slip away in the early going. They stayed with them. They kind of locked on, made their moves, and then they decided, it looks like that the Crimson have decided that they really want to take this race, but I think it's a little bit too early to say that California is going to let them do that, because California wants this win as well. That one spot can make a difference when you go into the semifinals in determining if you're going to go on to the semifinals, and then it could make a difference is where you place in the semifinals in a result to your grand final. So all these things factor in. They all play a part, but what a race from Harvard. So Harvard coming down, excellent row from the Crimson to kind of inch back into Cal, make some decisive moves down the race course, and take this lead away from California in the second 1,000 meters. So great racing going on between these two right here alongside lane number 1 and lane number 2. It's Harvard over California right now. Harvard with a great race plan, stuck with it. Harvard, third Varsity 8, doing a nice job to upset their seed, beating California, but both those two crews will move on to the semifinals. We've got Wisconsin, the Badgers coming in third, well clear of Cornell in the fourth place position. So California and Harvard. Harvard coming away with the win. California in that second qualifying position. Wisconsin and Cornell will be moving on into the repechage with a chance to take a repechage win and move into the semifinals. But what a race. Good race plan, good developing race from Harvard there. Nice job to see, getting a little bit down off the start on California, but sticking with their race and really executing well all the way down the race course to kind of turn that thing into a nice win for Harvard. So Harvard's third Varsity 8 coming away with a good win to wrap up the 8s racing for the morning. So we move on to something a little different now. We move into some Varsity 4s races. So these are 4 with coxswain. And as I said earlier, these are an unseeded event, so a little bit more variability in what the crews are. You also got a different makeup in a lot of these crews. Some of these crews, as teams are IRA members, and any team that's an IRA dues-paying member can enter into the Varsity 4. You don't have to qualify into the event. So you're seeing some crews that didn't make it as an 8, bringing their top guys in the Varsity 4. So in this first heat, we've got the top guys from Oklahoma City University and Holy Cross both coming in heat number 1 of the men's Varsity 4. Joining them in lane number 1, the Badgers from University of Wisconsin. Oklahoma City's that lane number 2. Harvard is in lane number 3. Washington in lane 4. And lane number 5, we have Holy Cross. So that's heat number 1 of the men's Varsity 4s with coxswain, the heavyweight event. We got 4 heats of these heavyweight 4s, followed by 2 heats of lightweight 4 widths. So 6 races to wrap up the morning of day 1 of the IRA. We saw some good racing all morning long. We got some Varsity 4s races coming up next. And let's check in for some race results.
Yes, so I have times from the men's third Varsity 8, heat number 4, which we saw just conclude. It was Harvard with a time of 5:47.8. And if you're wondering if that best Washington's time from heat number 1, well, it is still Washington by about 0.5 of a second. So Washington overall posting the fastest time, Harvard with the second fastest time But in that heat, of course, it was Harvard who won 5:47.8, California 5:49.7, Wisconsin 6 minutes .3, and Cornell 6:11.4 for those men's third varsity eights, 4 heats.
All right, so as I was talking about with these varsity fours, we got a little bit of variability of the event here. We don't have a seed, and we have crews that are the top guys of their program that are racing here. We've got some of the bigger squads. This is the 4V guys from some of the programs like what we're seeing in this heat number 1 of Washington, Harvard, and Wisconsin. Washington, Harvard, and Wisconsin all had varsity eights, second varsity eights, third varsity eights. So this is the guys that are just behind that ranking. So we will see excellent racing from these guys. Those teams are all incredibly deep. But we've also got Oklahoma City and Holy Cross both checking in with some of their top guys. I fully expect, we've seen Holy Cross put together some excellent fours in the last few years at the IRA. Washington has been traditionally very, very good in this Varsity Fours event recently at the IRA. So we're expecting to see some great racing coming from all these crews in the Varsity Fours. Varsity 4 heat number 1 is coming up next. We got heat number 2. We'll have California, Navy, Brown, MIT, and Dartmouth in heat number 2, the 11 o'clock race. So the 10:50 race coming up. It looks like about 10:50 right now, and we have, appears that we do have a start of heat number 1. We're sorry about the picture right now. We're trying to get a good view here. Heat number 1, we've got Wisconsin, Oklahoma City, Harvard, Washington, and Holy Cross there. 5 lanes. We've got in this Varsity Fours event, we got 20 crews in it. We've got 4 heats with 2 crews advancing to the semis. Everyone else going to the reps. There we go. We got the drone view up. And it looks like early on now we've got Washington, Harvard out there. Washington and Harvard out front with Holy Cross running right with them. So the 3 crews in the outside lane further away from the beach are the 3 in the lead right now. Washington, Harvard, and Holy Cross are your 3 leaders. We've got, reminder, 2 spots to advance in this race. So here we go. We've got a good race going on. It looks like Harvard's got bow ball to bow ball with Washington. So Washington and Harvard really right out front there. And it looks like Oklahoma City and Holy Cross just trailing those 2 with Wisconsin in the 5th position. So Fred, let's go and head out to you and check out these Varsity Fours. All right, so apologies for the little bit of technical problem on the audio from the launch, but looks like we've got that crew out here in lane number 4. The Washington Huskies with the lead over Harvard right now. Washington and Harvard battling it out front with Oklahoma City, Holy Cross, and Wisconsin trailing. Looks like Wisconsin's kind of got a good move through the middle thousand to kind of come back onto terms, coming alongside that Oklahoma City crew with Holy Cross in that 3rd position. But we got 2 crews moving through to the semifinals. So right now, Holy Cross is that black boat in lane number 5, creeping up on Harvard. Harvard looking pretty comfortable. The angle we got is a little deceiving. I think Harvard's got a little bit more of a lead than what we're looking at. But as you look across the buoy line, you can see Holy Cross really wants to move in and challenge Harvard for that next spot. Harvard's got to be very aware. Sometimes these coxswains that are in the bow loader boats, it's a little harder to see what's going on. You got to communicate well with your bow seat. That bow seat has to let them know, hey, Holy Cross is right on our tracks, and Holy Cross wants that qualifying spot. But who's out front? It's the Washington Huskies again. Washington's Varsity 4 doing a nice job really moving away here. So Washington development side of things for Washington is always critical. These younger athletes doing a nice job. Actually, this boat is mostly juniors. The junior class for Washington is covering most of this Varsity 4. One of the top guys academically for the Huskies, Elliot DeBrune, in the bow seat for the Dogs. One of the top dogs in the classroom, doing a nice job here on the race course today as well. And speaking of doing a nice job, we've got Holy Cross out there in lane number 5, really working hard to secure that qualifying position into the semifinals. So Washington on a clear lead. You can see them out front. Holy Cross in that next qualifying spot. Harvard just looking in that 3rd place clearly. Oklahoma City and Wisconsin battling in that 4th and 5th position.
And coming through now in the final stretch. So as we know, in the men's Varsity 4, in the heats, it's just first to semi 1 or 2, with all of the remaining crews relegated to the repechage. So the name of the game and the strategy here is to get out quickly, to stay ahead, and to continue building that momentum throughout the race. That's exactly what we're seeing right now from Washington as we see them come by the beach. Sheer power, a lot of length out of that stroke. And then Harvard just not quite able to keep themselves right in it. It's Washington with about a 1-length lead.
All right, so the Huskies looking long, looking strong, as Colleen said, just great length. We've got a very tall stroke seat, Cole Zaworski, in there for the Dogs, just stretching out that lead. Nice job by the Huskies, securing their place into that semifinal. Holy Cross in that next position, a good race from Holy Cross. Wisconsin moving through Oklahoma City and Harvard into that solid 3rd place position. So the 2 through to the semifinals are Washington, Holy Cross, Wisconsin in a solid 3rd place position. Harvard and Oklahoma City just finishing up the race right now. We've got these 2 coming across the line. Oklahoma City and Harvard in the 4th and 5th spots there. So good race from lane number 4, Washington, lane number 5, Holy Cross. Those 2 moving.
First to semi.
First place, just checking our sheet of what we got for
just the first,
the
just
Varsity
Washington.
4s. Sorry for my correction here, but it's just first place only to the semifinals. As we said, with a unseeded event, we just move 1 crew only into that semifinal. The remainder of the field goes into the reps for that second chance, where we'll have 2 crews advancing from the reps versus just 1 crew from those 8s races. So first and second from the reps move into the semifinals, and we've got first place only moving into semi 1 or 2. So Washington is your 1 crew moving on to the semifinals tomorrow. Everyone else will be racing those reps this afternoon. Going to head back up to the start for heat number 2 of that Varsity 4. We've got California, the Naval Academy next to them, Brown, MIT, and Dartmouth. As we talked about, unseeded event, so not 1 crew seated higher than the other. It's kind of a little bit more of see how it sorts out on the race course here. So California, Navy, Brown, MIT, and Dartmouth. MIT, that's their top guys, the top 4 out of the MIT program. Not racing an 8 here, so they've got their best guys going out in this Varsity 4. So expect to see a pretty good race coming from MIT. Always a deep program with Navy, Cal, Brown, and Dartmouth. I think that we could see any one of these crews coming away as the crew that moves into the semifinals.
And coming by the beach now, the Harvard men's 3rd Varsity 8. They rode out of heat 4. And of course they won that heat 4 with the time of 5:47.8. Second best time overall in the category. Just about a minute to the start then for heat number 2 of the men's Varsity 4. Up on the screen we can see these crews locked in, likely under starters' orders. As we know, it's just 1 to advance to the semis, with the remaining crews contesting in the repechage. So I think we can expect a quick start from all of these crews, keeping an eye especially on Cal and Navy. And times are in for heat number 1, so I'll read them quickly with just about 30 seconds to go. It was Washington 6:30.2 to advance directly, then Holy Cross 6:34.8, Wisconsin 3rd 6:42.0, Oklahoma 4th 6:55.6, and Harvard in 5th with a 6:56.0. So the question becomes then, which of these crews in heat 2, that's Cal, Navy, Brown, MIT, and Dartmouth, will get to join Washington directly in the semis. We can see on the screen then we have a race underway. It's a clean start and a fair start for all of these crews. A good start for Dartmouth. Cal, of course, as well on the far side.
Yeah,
and then these crews starting to sort themselves out here just a little bit.
Yep, exactly. They're just kind of getting into it right now. You can see that red boat of the MIT crew. It looks like California's got that lead. Good start from Cal. Strong start from Cal, as we talked about with the depth of their 3rd Varsity 8. The 3rd Varsity 8 from California performed well moving into the semifinals. Now this California Bears Varsity 4 trying to take away and move with this lead. Not being let off the hook by Dartmouth at all, though. Dartmouth out here in the lane number 5, the lane lowest on the screen if you're looking at the big screen. Dartmouth in lane number 5 is trying to press with California. California's got that lead over Navy, MIT right there with Navy, and Dartmouth. The only crew that's dropped back in the pack is the crew from Brown. So right now we've got 4 crews kind of trying to stay in the mix for that qualifying spot. But California clearly the leader right now, trying to press.
So California has got 3/4 of a length up on Dartmouth. Dartmouth has a couple of seats up on Navy. Navy has a seat or 2 up on MIT. And then Brown is running in 5th. California now trying to get a full length up on the field. But Dartmouth and Navy running neck and neck with MIT just a seat or 2 behind.
It's hard. It's like
getting some encouragement,
but it's hard to like think
as
about
we pass by
while you're talking.
one of the crews. Wow, great race in the middle here. California definitely dominant in the first 1,000 here.
Kicked it up at the start. I don't know.
But MIT is now making a little bit of a run, trying to press for that 2nd spot. Good for the engineers in their red hull. As you look down the course, you can pick them out. And I would say that MIT has got a little bit of a lead over Navy right now, and Dartmouth still just a half a deck, not even, ahead of those 2. So those 3 crews, you could throw a blanket over the bow, as they say, and you would hit all the bows. California looks comfortable in front. Let me see if I can get a rating check here. And if Dartmouth can separate themselves here.
Unfortunately, someone's
California at a comfortable 35 as we cross the 1,000. Who's going to take 2nd? Golly, these 3 boats boats are just locked together. Dartmouth, MIT, and Navy. Looks like MIT has got fractional advantage over Navy and Dartmouth. Yep. Engineers have definitely taken the rate up. I can see with my eye there that they're up just a click, 36 and a half. Dartmouth also at 36. No, Dartmouth's down, I take that back, around 33 and a half, 34. So they're doing a pretty good job with the power. But MIT now is your clear second position crew. MIT holding on to second, and Dartmouth starting to slip behind Navy as well. So Dartmouth went from even to fourth in about 15 or 20 strokes. California steady as she goes. No need to point them out. As we approach the 500-meter mark to go, it's the engineers scrappily digging away. 35 for the engineers. They've got a couple, 3 seats over Navy. Navy's got 2 or 3, maybe 4 seats over Dartmouth. And then it trails back to over to the finish line 10.
All right, so California doing their job. Nice work by the Golden Bears coming along here in lane number 1. We got California up on the lead, comfortably in front of MIT. MIT just getting a little bit of pressure there. But MIT doing a nice job. Navy pressing into the MIT second place position. But California out in the lead with that one qualifying spot into the semifinals. So the young men from Cal doing a nice job getting ready to secure that spot. We're in the final 500 meters with Cal on the lead. Coach Brandon Shaw and Sam Baum coaching those younger, lower boats of the California program. Got to be pretty happy with their performance. They've been duplicating what California's done all day in their heats, which is win going away comfortably. This California boat following up what their 2V and 1V did. Nice race from the Golden Bears. Comfortable out in front. It's Cal with the lead. Cal came into the Pac-12. This Varsity 4 for California raced to second place at the Pac-12 championships. And the California crew out in front, clearly ahead, looking very strong, just keeping a good length, good rhythm here. Want to clean through the finish line is the number one thing for Cal, making sure that they finish strong. Finish in that qualifying position here. So Cal over the line first to qualify into the semifinals with their Pac-12 rivals from Washington. Those two are your first two in this Varsity 4s. So Washington and Cal moving ahead into the semifinals. All the other crews will be racing the reps later this afternoon. We got the men's Varsity 4 heat number 3 coming up next, followed by Heat 4, and then we move into some Varsity 4s for the lightweight division after that. So good race from Cal, ahead the whole time, leading wire to wire. Good start, strong middle thousand, just kind of keeping aware of the field, keeping an eye on anything coming from that MIT crew that put in a nice effort down the race course. MIT clearly in second ahead of the Naval Academy. But MIT, Navy, they'll be battling it out in the repechage this afternoon. So we'll be back up. We got a look at the start now. You can take a quick look at lane number 2, 3, and 4 for heat number 3 coming up next. We got Northeastern just off your screen in lane number 1. Cornell there is the boat in lane 2. Stetson University is in lane number 3. Jacksonville next to them in 4, and Georgetown in lane 5. So like we talked about, a couple of these crews are lower boats from their programs, Northeastern and Cornell. We got the top guys from Stetson, Jacksonville, and Georgetown. So Georgetown, Jacksonville, and Stetson just not making it in an 8, but this is what their top guys have come in the Varsity 4. I expect to see some really good racing from these 3 crews along with Cornell and Northeastern. Georgetown probably looking at their top 4 guys probably a little bit eager to get this race underway. Stetson is here for their very first time at the IRA National Championships. They've been a varsity program since 1994. IRA team member, and these guys a couple years ago came to the coaches and said that's one of their goals was to get to the IRA, and this is the first step to doing that as a program. So first time that we've seen Stetson, the Hatters, coming in from DeLand, Florida. Great new facility down there. If you haven't ever checked out their website of their team, they've got a beautiful building there on their campus, on their lake. Great place to row. And they've got their Florida neighbors next to them on the race course as well. Jacksonville checking in lane number 4. So Stetson and Jacksonville from Florida in lanes 3 and 4. Northeastern in 1, Cornell in 2. The Hoyas out in lane number 5. So we'll be underway shortly here. Just probably about a minute to go for the heat number 3 of the Varsity Fours.
So in the meantime, I can update everyone on times from heat number 2 for the men's Varsity 4. It was California. Cal with a time of 6:29.7. MIT in second, 6:33.0. Navy in third, 6:36.3. Dartmouth in fourth, 6:39.5, and Brown in fifth, 6:49.8, which means that Cal has posted the fastest time thus far, just 0.5 of a second ahead of Washington. Washington, of course, our winner from Heat 1. Cal, our winner from Heat 2, that West Coast rivalry, but it's Cal just by an edge, about 0.5 second over Washington. Looking forward to seeing how Heat 3 develops. We should have, in fact, we do have a start well underway.
All right, so wow, this is looking like one of the most even starts that we've seen the whole morning. So we've got 5 boats, and it looks like any one of these could be kind of touching out into the lead right now. From the drone view, we kind of swing around and see that it's maybe just separating out a tiny bit to having the Hoyas, Georgetown, out in the lead. Not too surprising. Coach Luke Agnini's crew getting a good start, good traction. Looking like Stetson's running with them. So those two are the two in the lead right now, with Cornell, Jacksonville, and Northeastern also in the mix. We got a very tight race here in heat number 4 of the men's Varsity 4. So Stetson may be inching out just a little bit on Georgetown. Georgetown and Cornell in that second position. But right now, we take a look. There you go. You got the green unis of Stetson, red right next to them of the big red of Cornell, and out there over in lane number 1, you can see the lane number 1 bow marker, bow seat wearing one of those bucket hats. Northeastern's Huskies in lane number 1 as we saw the Hoyas go flashing by. So there is Georgetown in lane number 5. It looks like Georgetown is up on the lead now, ahead of Stetson and Jacksonville and Cornell. So the Hoyas doing a nice job here. As we look at the drone view, we got Georgetown is the boat closest, the boat at the lower part of the screen. Hoya's doing a nice job off the start, getting that lead. It looks like about a deck length over Stetson. Stetson doing a nice job here at their first IRA that they've been to. So Georgetown and Stetson over Jacksonville, Cornell, and Northeastern. So Fred, let's head on out onto the water and check out the Hoyas.
Okay, the Hoyas are closest to the reporting boat, and I'd still give the lead here to Stetson. Stetson has a couple of seats on the Hoyas, and then it's even between Jacksonville and Cornell, bow ball to bow ball, with Northeastern trailing. But your leader now, Stetson, is starting to press away from the Hoyas. They've got 3 seats on the Hoyas. Very impressive as they grind it out here in the second 500. 3 seats down, the Hoyas. Then let's give Jacksonville. I can't call Jacksonville and Cornell. Too even, very even from this perspective. So again, your leader Stetson putting on a nice show here. As you say, if this is their first trip to the IRA, they're representing themselves very nicely. But the Hoyas are taking a move right now to try and claw back some of that lead that Stetson has earned. As they passed the 1,000, the Hoyas took a press right before the 1,000 and let's see if their boat speed is picked up. 34 strokes a minute for the Hoyas. 35 and a half for Stetson. Those two crews now beginning to pull away from Jacksonville and Cornell. Jacksonville and Cornell have not changed position in the last 700 meters. They're just locked together. But Stetson starting to press again. Let Georgetown take their move, and now Stetson's taking a move in this middle third 500. They're doing a really nice job. 36 now for Stetson. 36 for Georgetown. Good patience. Stetson's letting the boat run out. You got to let the boat work for you a little bit on the recovery, and the ratio looks pretty good in that Stetson crew, and that's why they're leading. They've got the power, the timing, and a little bit better run than Georgetown right now. Coming up to the last 500. Let's see if the Hoyas can do something here. And I'll get ready to pass it over to the tower, so we'll turn the launch around with Stetson and their premier appearance here, their inaugural appearance, looking good.
Yeah, well, Stetson doing a fantastic job here in their first showing at the IRA, doing a nice job, as Fred talked about. Just great rhythm coming from the Stetson crew, just doing a nice piece of work here of letting the boat carry for them between strokes, matching each other very well. You can see just they got one senior, the bow seat sitting in there, Zach Ewing, doing a nice job holding that rhythm and trying to keep an eye on the Hoya attack that should be coming. And if Georgetown wants it, if Georgetown wants to get that one spot into the semifinals, they've got to make their big move and be very aggressive with it right now. So the Hoyas trying to make up some ground, or are they going to be satisfied with going to the reps? I think that the Hoyas should make a challenge here in these red buoys here, the final 250. But Stetson with a nice job leading from the front. Stetson coming into the final 250 meters, running down the beach here. You can see Stetson doing a very good piece of work throughout this whole race. They just stayed in it, stayed focused, stayed internal, and you can see it paying off for them. So Stetson over Georgetown. We got a close race between Cornell and Jacksonville in that third spot with Northeastern trailing. But Stetson on the lead at the IRA for their first time, their first race down the IRA. You can see they're doing a great job here. Let's hear it for the Hatters in their final 5 strokes or so. So nice job by Stetson to come away with a victory in their very first performance at the IRA. So nice job, Stetson. Win over Georgetown. Good work by Cornell here in the final 250 to take that third position over Jacksonville. So we've got the winner moving on with California and Washington, those two who've been to the IRA an incountable number of times, joined by their first time from Stetson University, the Hatters making a run into the semifinals of the Varsity 4 for the heavyweights. So excellent race by Stetson. We've got one more race coming up for the men's Varsity 4s. We've got heat number 4, Marist, Boston University, Princeton, Drexel, and Syracuse in heat 4 of the men's Varsity 4s. Last race of the heavyweight racing. We'll follow it up with the finishing races of the morning, the 11:30 and 11:40 races. We've got lightweight 4s action in the lightweight 4s with Coxon. 2 heats of that to finish up the morning. Then we'll be returning at 1:50 this afternoon for the start of the repechage races. We'll be starting out the afternoon session at 1:50 with the men's varsity 8s reps. So we've got 3 races to go on day 1 AM session of the IRA. Great racing so far. We'll finish up with 3 more races to go for the morning. All right, so we're going to be back up to the start here. Nice look down the race course here. We've got coming up, we've got the Varsity Fours, heat number 4. We've got in lane 1, Marist University, and then Boston University in 2, Princeton in 3, Drexel in 4, and Syracuse in 5. As we've kind of talked about, we've got Marist. This is their top guys. Missed out on making the team bid, but they've got their top guys here in the Varsity 4. I expect this program from Marist to have really probably excellent athletes in this Varsity 4. Should be given a challenge to some of these traditional powers like Princeton in this race. So Marist, Boston University, Princeton, Drexel, and Syracuse. You can see the picture looking up at the start platform, 2, 3, and 4. Lanes 2, 3, and 4. Boston, Princeton, and Drexel there. We'll be off with the start shortly here. It looks like we're under a minute to go. So in the Varsity 4s, we do have late notice. Syracuse is a scratch here for race heat number 4. So unfortunate, a little bit of illness there going through the Syracuse team. So Syracuse is a scratch here. So we've got a 4-boat race with 2 boats moving on in this Varsity 4s race. So Marist, Boston University, Princeton, and Drexel. One thing noticing as we look through the whole lineup of races here for the IRA, the state representing the most here at the IRA is the 6 programs from the state of New York. Syracuse, Cornell, Columbia, Colgate, in the Varsity 8 for the first time, Hobart, and Marist. So 6 states coming from New York all the way out here to California to show off their speed in the final race of the year. We've got it underway. We've got a start, and it looks like BU and Princeton on the lead early ahead of Drexel and Marist. Boston with the best start. Princeton right there with them. I don't think you can even separate between those two very much. So BU with the lead over Princeton. Marist in that solid 3rd position, challenging with Princeton. Princeton and BU up there out front. Princeton looking like they might be even inching into that Boston University lead. Sometimes tough to see the buoy markers, but yeah, Princeton and BU right neck and neck in the lead, with Marist and Drexel just trailing them. So again, the Varsity 4s, men's Varsity 4s for the heavyweights. We got 1 boat to advance. Who's going to join the Stetson Hatters, Cal Golden Bears, and the Washington Huskies into the semifinals? But Princeton, nice job here by the Tigers. Looking strong, good catch, good place, good drive. I like what the Tigers are doing ahead of Boston University. BU hanging right with them, though. So the Princeton staff's got to be pretty happy seeing their boat on the lead here and moving away from BU and Marist. Marist, if they want to try to challenge, they've got to start moving into that lead pretty soon. But the Tigers with a really strong second 250 meters. As they hit the 500-meter mark, we've got the Tigers on the lead. Fred, out to you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. The Tigers have taken a push here to get some separation between themselves and BU, but they're working. I think they're paying a little bit more for it. It looks pretty physical there. Not that it wouldn't, but it's 36 plus. But they're working hard, sending those puddles back. BU, get a rating check on them, 34. So they're a couple beats under BU. Under Princeton, and then it's over to Marist, about 3/4 of a length behind them, and then over to Drexel in lane. The Tigers continue to advance in the second 500. Almost a length over the Terriers. Trying to get a good margin to protect as opposed to try and come from behind. Boston, a little bit low on the rating right now. 32 is probably not going to get you into that qualifying spot. So they've got to bring their rating up if they want to chase Princeton down. Marist is also higher, 35 than BU. go through the 1,000. Princeton leading the charge. Body language says a lot, and that Princeton stroke has got his head down and he's driving his legs hard. Looks like they're taking another press. 34.5, 35 for the Tigers. BU's up the rating now, I think, to 33. Maybe the coxswain caught them sleeping there and brought the rating back up. But Marist is doing a nice job challenging Boston right now. Marist over in lane 1 is challenging the Terriers, and it's just drawn level. About 7:50 in, it's the Tigers. Probably got a good overhead shot from the drone as well. But Marist has caught Boston and is dead level with the Terriers. Really, Princeton was aggressive from the get-go, and I would say their rating has come up. And maybe I'm wrong. Let's see here. 35, so maybe it hasn't come up. Just looks a little spinnier, if that's a word. They're spinning pretty hard. Boston is reclaimed. Yes, they're just reclaiming that second spot over Marist, so they're trying to amp it up a little bit. I'll turn it over to the tower with Princeton in good control.
Yep, Princeton out on the lead, looking great out front there, as you like to see when you're the coach. You got to see your guys, and they look comfortable. They've executed what they needed to get done for the day, which is make sure that they get the lead and they make that qualifying spot into the semifinals. So an excellent row from the Tigers. Princeton's younger guys in this Varsity 4 doing a great job. Good work here. We got one graduating senior in the Princeton boat, Hunter Johnson. So Coach Greg Hughes kind of let me know that they give a choice to guys that are in the lower boats. If you're a senior, do you want to stick around and do graduation at Princeton on campus, or do you want to make the trip with your team to the IRA? Hunter decided, hey, this team's so important to me, I'm going with them. So Hunter doing a great job in this Princeton Varsity 4 as a senior, choosing to be out here in Rancho Cordova, racing with his teammates, racing for the Tigers, doing an excellent job. They've got the lead. They're going to secure that spot into the semifinals along with California, Washington, and Stetson University for the very first time. But let's see. The Tigers doing a great job. We got a good race going on. Marist pressing BU for that second spot. I think Marist and BU are both going to be very much in contention for a repechage spot to move into the semifinals. So we've got a good lead for Princeton. Princeton rowing with good power and rate here as they get through the second or last 200 meters of the race. Boston University creating just a little bit of overlap here as they cross the finish line with Princeton. And Marist right on the stern of BU. So good race here from those three top crews. Drexel wrapping up the field for the men's Varsity 4s. So the heavyweight Varsity 4s event just finishing up for the morning. We've got 2 more races to go on the day. So the 4 boats moving forward into the semifinals from this event. The Varsity 4s moving into the semifinals. We've got Washington, California, Stetson, and Princeton. Those are your 4 crews that move into the semifinals. They'll be joined with 2 crews winning, or the first and second place crews from this afternoon's repechage races, which will be going off at 3:30 p.m. We've got 4 reps of men's Varsity 4s with 2 boats from each rep going through to that semifinal tomorrow. So 2 more races to go on the morning. We've got the men's lightweight 4s, and we've got 2 heats of them. The first one coming up, we've got in lane 1, Dartmouth, Yale, Navy, Pennsylvania, and Cornell. For those 5 crews for heat 1 of the men's lightweight Varsity 4s. And then we got in heat number 2, that will be coming up after that, we got Harvard, Georgetown, Princeton, and Columbia. So a lot of the Ivy League and traditional Eastern Sprints lightweight powerhouse teams representing in these lightweight Varsity 4s in the next 2 races. So we'll be finishing up the morning. We'll wrap up the morning show with just a little recap of how the day has gone. But we've seen great racing all morning and absolutely perfect California weather here at Rancho Cordova, at Lake Natoma. What a great venue. What great racing we've seen all morning long. So we got the view from up above here of the second to last race of the day.
And less than a minute to go for the start of the men's varsity lightweight 4 Heat 1 with Dartmouth, Yale, Navy lightweight, Penn, and Cornell. So these are coxed 4s, so you'll see the coxswains sitting in these bow loaders, which means they're the first to cross the line. They have a really nice view and are able to steer very, very straight in these full buoyed courses. So we saw some straight 4s earlier, which means a 4 without a coxswain, and now we add a coxswain to the mix.
So a lot of these these varsity lightweight 4s are guys that have been in the second varsity lightweight cruise for the year. And so we've taken a look back at some of the 8s racing for the lightweight varsity 8s at the Eastern Sprints as an indication of who to maybe look out for in these races. Cornell was your winner of the second varsity lightweight event at Eastern Sprints, followed by Yale. Pennsylvania was the bronze and in the lightweight second varsity. So we got some good crews coming up here in these varsity 4s. So you got the Bowcox boats, all 5 of these crews here. We've got Cornell out here in lane number 5. So some of these guys in the Cornell boat, they were the gold medal winners in the second varsity lightweight 8 event. Probably see an aggressive start from Cornell out here in the boat closest to you as you're watching on the screen or if you're watching us at home. So Cornell on the lower side of the screen. We've got Dartmouth up top, Yale in 2, Navy in 3, Penn in 4, and Cornell out in lane 5. And it looks like the midshipmen getting the jump on everybody, and Navy's lightweight 4 width getting a great start. Good work by the midshipmen to get a good lead early on in the race here. And it looks like we've got just a little bit of separation coming now. So we've got Navy over Yale, Penn, Cornell, and Dartmouth pretty tightly packed there in second through 5th position. But the Navy lightweight's doing a nice job getting a good jump early on in the race here. The young men from the academy, they've got a pretty high expectation. As I talked with Coach Sean Bagnall about these Navy lightweights, they've done very well in some of the lightweight 4s events over the last few years. This race was not contended officially last year at the IRA as the weather conditions prevented some of the lower boats from racing at the end of the races at Mercer Lake last year. But today, another story. We've got perfect conditions out here on the lake. So, Fred, let's go out to you. We got these midshipmen in the lead.
All right, it looks to me like Yale has the lead from our perspective, but let's get a closer look as they draw level. I would give the advantage to Yale here by about a deck over the middies. When I was coaching in Navy, we used to have gold shirts too. That would separate them. And you can see they're in their dark shirts today with their gold and blue blades. But Yale has 2.5 seats up on Navy. Then I think third place would be running down to Penn. Penn has a seat up on Cornell, and Cornell has a seat up on Dartmouth on the inside in lane 1. So very tight race right now. Yale and Navy running they're all leveling up here. Pennsylvania's scratched their way back into contention here, challenging Navy. So Yale has a seat on Navy. Navy and Penn are dead level, and I'd say Penn has got some momentum here. Penn is coming up, and Cornell just about 4 seats back of the Quakers. Then over to lane 1 would be, again, Dartmouth. Dartmouth's just about a length back of Cornell. Yale trying to hold on to that lead. But the Quakers challenging and Navy. It's a fist fight in the middle of the course here. These guys are duking it out, and they're stroke for stroke, pretty much according to my eye here. They're all rowing the same rating, and that rating would be 35. So, looks like Yale has slipped back a little bit now, and Navy and Penn are the leaders. So Navy and Penn give Navy the lead right now by a half a deck over Penn. And then Cornell, I keep waiting for Cornell to make a move here in the third 500. And I think they are coming up. Let me get a rating check on Cornell. Wow, this is a very exciting race. All these four bows right across. So Big Red is at 37, and that's their solution to catching up, is to take the beat up a little bit. But Navy is hanging on and driving. Navy at 37 also. So it's like one did a rate shift and then the other did a rate shift. Pennsylvania doing their best to hold on to that second spot to keep it away from Cornell. And 35 still for Penn. So Penn has an extra gear in their inventory. But Navy is looking inspired. They've got 2 or 3 seats on Pennsylvania right now. Cornell has not been able to draw even with Penn yet. Very close, but not yet. Yale has fallen off the pace of those 3 leaders. And just as I said, Cornell hasn't found the gear. I think they're just about to find it. So I'll turn it over to the tent with Cornell taking over second place from Penn.
All right, well, look at this race. This is what we expect from the lightweight league here. Excellent racing, quality throughout this whole division. So Navy out there on the lead. A lot of the other crews there, Cornell and Penn, contending in those 2 positions to lock into the final. So lightweight events here at the IRAs, heats straight to the grand finals. No reps, no semis. It's just top 3 into the grand finals, and we're seeing some great racing. Cornell really putting on a push here. Navy's got a good lead. Navy's got a good spot to take a look back and control the race, but Cornell getting pushed by Penn, and Cornell and Penn really racing for this second, third position, trying to see what they can do to maybe move on to terms with the Naval Academy. But Navy out front. Coach Bagnall and Coach James Sands works with the lower boats at Navy. Have to be pretty satisfied looking at this Navy crew out in front. A good performance by Navy down in this race. And we've got 2 crews locked into the battle for second and third. 3 crews to qualify through. It looks like we're going to have those Pennsylvania and Cornell crews into the qualifying spots, but it's kind of a guess now as to who's going to get second and who's going to get third. Cornell pressing with Penn right beside them, so the Quakers and the Big Red right by each other, pressing into second and third place positions behind the Naval Academy. The gold and blue of Navy crossing the line first. Pennsylvania and Cornell, super close race between those 2, but all 3 of those crews will be moving on to the grand final. Yale coming in that 4th position. And Dartmouth with the lightweight varsity 4 wrapping up 5th place. Dartmouth, the big green over the line in 5th place position in this lightweight 4 width. So nice racing there. Excellent race by the Naval Academy. And what a tremendous race from Cornell and Penn, really fighting each other through that whole race course. But good racing all the way down. The one thing that's come up every time I've talked with any of these lightweight coaches prepping for the IRA is how competitive this lightweight division is. You see that in the varsities. You see that in the second varsity lightweights at sprints. You're seeing it here today in these lightweight straight 4s, and then now in the lightweight coxed 4s as well. So we've got 1 race left on the morning. We've seen an excellent slate of events all day long here at Lake Natoma. The varsity lightweight 4s wrapping up the day, the 11:40 event. We've got heat number 2, Harvard, Georgetown, Princeton, and Columbia. 3 boats moving on to the grand final of the lightweight 4 with coxswain. 1 boat will be down in the petite. So we've got Navy, Penn and Cornell very close. I'm going to have to take a look at those race results there for that one to see which boat got that second place, which boat ended up in third. But those were your 3 crews to go qualifying through to the grand final for sure. We'll have to check and see who the second and third was, though. So taking a look up at the start now, you got the angle looking over. You can just see a touch of lane number 1 there. Lane number 1, Harvard. Lane 2, that is Georgetown. Princeton in 3, and Columbia out in lane number 4. Again, as we've seen with these, it's like anyone's race. Anyone's race here in this lightweight varsity 4s. So going ahead and looking at the results here from Eastern Sprints. Got the crews up at the start, just waiting the call here. So in the lightweight, the crews that are in this event here today, Harvard was your 5th place finisher in the 2V. Georgetown was second in the petite final. Princeton was 4th place overall in the lightweight second varsity, and Columbia was your 6th place finisher in the lightweight second varsity 8 event. So Harvard finished the highest at Eastern Sprints in the 2V8. Now it's a little bit different. You've got the 4s. You're in a little bit different lineups. As some of these coaches said, it's a really quick turnaround from the Eastern Sprints into the IRAs. You only got a few days to really work on selection and figure out your varsity 4s mix with these lower boats of the lightweight squads. So right now it's looking like we got Columbia, Princeton, and Georgetown just over Harvard. So we got 3 crews in the lead. Harvard slipped back a little bit off the start. If you're going to call anyone, maybe Princeton by a foot over Georgetown and Columbia, but excellent racing going on between these 3 leaders. Harvard's going to have to get back on terms if they want to take part in the grand final of the lightweight race. So here we go. We've got, it looks like Georgetown now taking over the lead. Right there with Princeton and Columbia as well. So 3 crews overlapping. Harvard is definitely not off the pace by too much. Harvard's definitely going to be still in this race. We got 3 crews moving on into that grand final on Sunday, seeing what they can do. But great racing from that first heat of the lightweight varsity 4s with, and Georgetown just edging out on Princeton and Columbia. It's very tightly packed. Princeton, Columbia, and Georgetown with Harvard trailing. Fred, let's check it out, see who you got in the lead.
All right, you're correct. The Hoyas are in the lead. And as we pointed out here in the launch, my compatriot Paul Wilkins really identified a good swing and hang from that Georgetown crew. And they've got a 2-seat advantage over the Tigers, maybe 1.5 seats. And then it's Harvard marginally over Columbia, maybe 1 seat over Columbia. So very tightly packed, all crews within a length of each other. And now it looks like the Tigers are beginning to advance on Georgetown. The Tigers taking a press here. Wow, these boats are dead level. Take a check here. It's the last race of the morning. Take a check on the ratings. Tigers at 36. Let's see what the Hoyas are here. They're 36.5 too. They're pretty much stroke for stroke. I think Columbia is beginning to take a press here. Harvard's slipping back another seat. Not anywhere near out of it by any means, but just back a little bit. And I think the Lions are starting to roar here. They are coming up even with the Hoyas now and are starting to press the Tigers. into the third 500. Can the Lions catch the Tigers as the Hoyas begin to fade just a little bit? Patience is the word for the Lions, and I like their real patience at the belly as they come in and around. The hands come around, but there's not a rush. There's a nice gather in the bow by the Columbia Lions here. And they are beginning to inch up on the Tigers. Let's see what happens. 34.5 for Columbia. That gives them money in the bank for the last 750 here. So here come the Lions. They're stroke for stroke with the Tigers. The Hoyas have faded 4 seats, and Harvard's 5 or 6 seats behind the Hoyas.
We can keep going.
Yeah, I like the way the Lions are rowing here. Very controlled. And they're giving Princeton a good battle. And see if they're going to shift it up. Because so far, the Lions have been very conservative in their rating. And we know the Tigers can sprint. Though I know that program. They know how to get it up and go. Cut it off. We'll get ready to toss it over to Colleen and Steve. And here come the Lions. They're up 2 seats. Over to the tent.
All right. It sure is a race coming from the Lions and the Tigers. And you can see that the drone view, you get both boats. You got the bucket going in the middle of the boat there, but good power coming from the crew from Columbia. You can talk about patience, but they've done a good job of controlling the race. Nice job by Columbia here to take the lead. It looks like they're inching away from Princeton. Georgetown staying in that final qualifying spot. Harvard about a half a length down on Georgetown, but we're coming into the final 250 meters, and it's going to take a huge sprint from Harvard to walk through Georgetown for a qualifying spot. It looks like they've got it. 3 spots to go through. So 3 spots to go through. We're seeing the crews starting to lift their rates up real high. Columbia doing a nice job out front. Princeton trying to kind of track them back down. Georgetown in that final 3rd qualifying spot with Harvard alongside the shore. Harvard in the red closest to the shore, really trying to move and challenge Georgetown right now. Can they get there? It's going to be running out of room a little bit, but Columbia, your leaders, Columbia's done a nice job to stick with the Tigers in the early part of the race and then kind of just inch back through and then make a pretty decisive move with about 500 meters to go. So it's Columbia looking very strong out in front. The guys from New York doing great job. Columbia with the lead here. So the Columbia Lightweights Varsity 4 width is your winner of the final race of the morning. Princeton in a solid 2nd place ahead of Georgetown with Harvard in 4th. So 3 crews moving on into that grand final for the lightweight 4 width. So that's our final race of the morning. Excellent racing. Gotta love the lightweight field here at the 2019 IRA races. So great job by all crews this morning. We're going to wrap up the morning with just a quick recap and let you know what's coming up for the afternoon. So this morning, what we saw, great racing, things kind of in the heavyweight division, things kind of played to their seed almost all the way down with crews in the top seeds moving into the semifinals. But what happens now is things sort out into the repechage races this afternoon. And I think that we could be seeing some great reps this afternoon. So even if you don't have a fighting interest in the reps, I suggest you get back down here because these are some races that 1 boat to qualify. You see a lot of crews trying to really put everything on the line for that 1 spot through the repechage races. So starting at 150 today, we've got the men's varsity 8s. We got 4 of those. The men's 2nd varsity at 230. 3rd varsities, we got 2 reps running at 310 and 320. And then we'll wrap up the afternoon of reps here at Lake Natoma with the 3:30 start of the men's varsity 4 reps. So I think we got a good slate of races coming up in the afternoon repechage. We had some great racing on the lightweight side this morning as well.
Yeah, wonderful racing from the lightweights. Such a competitive field, as we've talked about so often this morning. Really anyone's game, particularly in that lightweight Varsity 8. In the 8s, it was Princeton overall with the fastest time in the heats. They were the winners of Heat 1. Of course, a lot of eyes on Cornell. Cornell won Heat 2, about 2 seconds or so behind Princeton's time. So keeping an eye on Cornell. A little bit of a disappointing finish for them at the Eastern Sprints, and they rode their heat very inspired this morning. So excited to see what that means for them in the finals. So just a quick recap for the 8. The top 3 times, in fact, came out of Heat 1. Princeton, as I mentioned, with a 5:45.6. It was Columbia, though, with the second fastest time overall. So, of course, worth noting Columbia and UPenn, because UPenn had the third fastest time overall at a 5:47.5. Then it was Cornell with the fourth fastest time. Princeton won Heat 1. Cornell won Heat 2. Exciting racing to come, absolutely, in the semifinals. In the lightweight 4, 2 heats. The top 2 times came out of Heat 1. That was Dartmouth and Harvard. Navy won Heat 2. They took the third fastest time overall. Princeton finished third in Heat 1. They took the fourth fastest time overall. So the headliner here is that times are pretty tight, and we can expect some incredible racing out of the semis.
All right, and finishing up, just a quick update on those Varsity 4s. I think one of the performances of the morning, the Varsity 4s, I think that crew from Stetson with their first race here at the IRA Championships and coming away with a win. They are 1 for 1 in their IRA performance. So great job by them moving into the semifinals to join Washington, California, and Princeton. So folks, come back on down to the beach, tune back in this afternoon wherever you are. 1:50 this afternoon is the start of the repechage. We'll be running till a 4 p.m. race. And then Saturday, we'll have a lot of semifinal action coming up all morning long. And then tune in Sunday morning for some great grand final national championship races. Particularly, set your clocks, 10:56 Pacific time Sunday morning. We got the crews selected, or the 6 crews that will be racing in the grand final of the lightweight men's 8. I think it could be one of the best races we see all year. Princeton, Columbia, Pennsylvania, Cornell, Yale, and Navy. It's 6 boats coming into that lightweight varsity 8s race, and I think you got anyone for gold medal chance there. So thanks for watching today. Thanks for coming down to Lake Natoma. Signing off for the morning, I'm Steve Todd, joined by Colleen Savelle and Fred Schock on the water. Thanks, and we'll see you this afternoon for the repechage of the 2019 IRA Championships.